Just want to welcome, before we start, Alice Blanchard, who's sitting in the back row there. Alice is our Manager of Knowledge and Information. You would have met George. George has replaced Alice while Alice is on maternity leave, so wait about 7 months or something like that now. So Alice is just here as an observer tonight in the gallery, just to listen to the discussion, so welcome back just for that. Now, I just need to see if there are any comments on the notes of the last workshop. Some of your new elected members wouldn't have been part of that, but the existing elected members, are there any notes, any comments on those notes?
No.
So I remind you that tonight's workshop is being recorded, and there's a microphone there. And
Last one, isn't it?
But it'll be placed on YouTube and on our website. So
When you get home, you can watch it.
what we intend to do from here on in is to rotate the chair of this meeting between the directors. I'll be leading tonight, and from here we'll rotate it around. So Ginny will be chairing next week's. So just the process is going to be from here on in. Okay, we'll head straight into the first item to get things moving. Ginny, perhaps if you could introduce Wendy for us and lead us through this first section.
Yep. 2 Sundays ago, during the elected members induction Sunday gathering day, we mentioned that there's a whole heap of training and development rollout for elected members. So this is the first of the many. And today we're going to talk about record management training for elected members, and we're also going to touch on the policies for elected members in record management. So I'll introduce Wendy. Wendy Thursdale, she's from Info Osmosis, and she'll be providing the training for us. She has 26 years of experience in records management, working in local, state, and private sector. I'll hand over to you, Wendy.
Thank you, everyone. And Ginny failed to mention that I'm also a resident of Ratepayal. I've lived my entire life in Prospect, and I worked for this council for 13 years, from the late 80s right through the 90s, and so it is very attached to Prospect, as you can imagine. And the funny thing is that my father also was born in Prospect, and I grew up in Prospect. My children were the third generation to go to Prospect Primary School. So it's like my country town. It's my country town. And no one's ever been leaving Prospect except in probably a box. So I expect to see me around in the future. As Ginny said, I've had a lot of experience over the past 26 years, not just in this council, but I left this council to undertake a project for local government within state government, and I stayed in state government and worked in state government for quite a few years, and then went out into my own consultancy 10 years ago, and I still work across local government and state government. I never quite left local government. So that experience has helped me to maybe impart some stories and knowledge to you to this presentation, and your understanding of what your requirements are as an elected member representing this council. Please ask me questions as you go along. I know it's hard with a mouthful of chicken and fish, and I must admit I watched one of the workshops online on the council's website, and all I could hear was people eating. You can't actually hear what anyone's saying. So it didn't look great, so I'm glad you're not doing it anymore. This is the last one. But anyway, feel free to ask me questions as you go along. So we've got a presentation up here. Okay. So the purpose of this session is to give you as elected members, and I think this is a good boost for the CEO and the directors as well, and an awareness of managing information and records in local government, the standards and legislation that direct your practice. I'll be covering that as well very briefly so I don't lose you to the afters in the noddies. Your role and responsibilities as elected members, and the impact on you and council, and I'm also going to touch on council's responsibility as well, because you're the decision makers about council budgets and projects, etc. So it's giving you an awareness of what council's requirements are in the management of their information and records. So I think that's important as well. The nature of local government, as you know, and some of you are newly elected, so you get to maybe have the full impact of what the nature of local government is. And having worked across state government as well, and in the private sector, and touched on the Commonwealth government. I've realised that local government has greater challenges than any of the other tiers of government, and even private sector in some cases, even though private sector under scrutiny. Local government, because of its diversity and the expectation that what the state and Commonwealth don't want to do gets pushed onto local government. And so I've watched the responsibilities and the services that are required to be provided by local government have expanded as the years have progressed. And I think that increases. I often read in the media where suddenly a government department says, well, we're going to authorise councils to enforce some piece of legislation, whereas before local government didn't need to manage that or worry about that. More responsibilities have been pushed onto local government, and I know that some of you that have been working in local government long term or have been elected member long term will agree with me on that aspect. Yes, so local government is incredibly diverse, it's complex, it's challenging, and it's evolving. And one of the most important things, though, is that managing this information is an important process in council because it underpins all other processes. It's the first thing that council needs to go to provide evidence that something happened, someone said something, and when it happened, and who decided it. So if it's not actually documented and recorded and managed in a particular way, then that evidence isn't there. And so it really is an important part of the management of council. Now, the management of information records, as I said, it's evolved over the years from a paper and hard copy and digital object-based environment. I'm not sure your experiences in your working life. Some of you may run your own business, some of you may work for government, some of you may be retired, lucky you. No matter where you work, whether it's private sector, government, or for yourself, then you do have some sort of record-keeping responsibilities. Even running your own house, when you think about it, how many filing cabinets have you got where you've got your bills, your invites, your house extension projects and all of that? You're dealing with records on a regular basis. And you've probably noticed too in your own working life and home life that that's evolved from having lots and lots of paper to now receiving information via email or by creating a document on your own desktop at home and saving that as a record and not bothering to print that out and put it in your filing cabinet. So local government, the council itself, has evolved as well from a very paper-based and therefore arduous process of managing paper records to an electronic records management process. We now manage the records in the council electronically in a system that can hold and manage electronic records. So there's been a transition there over the years, and all councils now, except for probably one metropolitan council is left that doesn't work yet in an electronic environment. They're still in paper. They're trying to be pushed into the 20th century to join the 21st century. There's only one metropolitan council left, and most of the regional councils now, the larger ones, are all managing records electronically, and a lot of even the small country councils as well have moved towards electronic records management. So it's something that's taken over the world. It's also most businesses, and state government is a little bit slower than local government. State government, you find, will be very much behind local government in the advancements in managing information. So the local government's done really well because of people like the information management team you have here and previous people that work here. So it's now a dynamic, fast-paced environment of digital data, multiple systems, with exponential growth in the information and records. We're actually dealing with a lot more information. And you as elected members are as well. You're going to be receiving all, for the new ones, you wait, you'll be receiving emails and information to be able to undertake your role. We've also got emerging technologies for information dissemination, communication and storage. And so that's all changing as well. I worked in an environment years ago where we just had paper records. Then we suddenly put councils' business processes onto a computer. So we started managing property and rates and dogs and development on a computer. Then we put PCs on people's desks and said, go ahead, you're now going to create these things electronically. And then we added email, and that was the end of the world that we knew it, because now suddenly emails fly all over the place in this conduct of business. And so emails have now become a big risk for council, a big risk for you as elected members. But hang on, we've added to that. We've added now with social media. So we've got another element of communicating our business as well. And how do we manage to control that? So there is a desire to streamline the creation and capture and access of that information. So council is working towards that and continues to work towards that, and it's doing very well compared to a lot of other councils. And I do go across a lot of councils, so I can say that with hand on heart, not just because you're my council. So I do have that overview across this state. So when I'm talking about records management, what am I talking about? It's having that understanding of what is the record of your role as an elected member. There is a definition that comes from the international standards, international standards. And when you read that definition, you can see that it's fairly broad. And it says that it's information that's created and received and maintained as evidence and information by an organisation or person, so that's you and that's council, in the pursuance of legal obligations or in the transaction. So your legal obligations, of course, relate to the myriad of acts that relate to this council, relate to your role as an elected member. But it's the transaction of business that is the grey area. When you get a letter from a resident that says, I'm not happy with the potholes in my street, or the trees are dropping berries, the old berry trees, goodness me, that's been for, 30 years everybody's been complaining about the white cedar berries on streets, but yep, I slipped over. When you get those letters, that's in the transaction of business. That's not under any legal obligation for that resident to write to you. That's just in the normal transaction of business. So you may email back to them, you may write back to them and say, yes, I've flagged that with council and we'll be discussing that. That's transacting business in your role as an elected member. So when you look at that definition, that's very, very broad, and that can relate to a lot of the communication and even some notes and diaries that you create in relation to your role as an elected member. Very, very broad. You transfer that onto what council has to do, council administration has to manage. That is absolutely huge. And that is irrespective of medium format. Not just paper, it's not just emails, electronic, it can be in any media or format that information is held or transacted in. So when we end up with looking at all the types of media and format that records would end up being in, we end up with quite a diverse range, and as I said, they are emerging. Years ago we didn't have Facebook, and if you had Facebook you certainly didn't use it for business purposes, but now we are. We're communicating with the community via Facebook, via Twitter. I'm not sure whether people read it or not, but it's there. I don't like Facebook very much. I don't want to know what somebody had for tea and what glass of wine they had and all of that. I'm getting sick of being inundated with that. I don't care about other people's lives that much, but it's a way of communicating with business, so we're drawn into it. So, of course, we've got the traditional documents, emails, faxes, and they're phasing out as well. Plans, we've got data, photos, correspondence, recordings even. So we're recording this meeting. It's a record of this meeting. It's a recording. How do we manage that? We have to capture it some way so that we can access it again. If somebody comes back in 20 years' time and says, were they eating chicken or fish at that meeting? Or what did that person say to the elected members? Were they informed? So will that be there and available and readable in the future? We have reports, even SMSs. And when I say that to people, I go, oh, no. If you are transacting your business via SMS and it is a record that should be captured, then it can be emailed. You can email an SMS to your email account. And therefore, it can be captured.
You're looking at me.
No, sorry. Sorry, I'm going to take this thing on that side. Not really. I'm looking at the spot above your head.
Good, good.
So even SMSs, if that is a method that's used to transact your business with a ratepayer or with an officer of council, then that SMS. Oh, what happened? Did we go backwards? Okay. And of course, social media has been added to that mix. And who knows what's next? So we end up with emerging technologies and formats that's always a challenge for your information management department to to say, okay, right, how do we get council to actually manage this new emerging technology, if that's the way we're going to talk to our residents and inform the public about what we're doing. So the legislation and standards, why do you have to do this? I mean, it would be great to say, well, you've got a policy, but there's something underlying that policy. You actually have a legal obligation to manage your records in a particular way. And that legislation is the State Records Act of 1997. And under that Act, the description of an agency is a municipal or district council and a person who holds an office established by an Act, and that's you as elected members. Your office is established by an Act. Therefore, you are subject to the provisions of the State Records Act. Now, I know there were some moves afoot quite a few years ago through the LGA to have elected members removed from the requirements of the State Records Act, and that didn't work, so you're still obligated under that Act. So, unfortunately, that never actually happened for you. So you have the provisions of the State Records Act, and the Council, of course, is subject to that Act as well. And I'll touch on a couple of the provisions that affect you directly as well. We also have the Local Government Act 1999, which I hope you've all dutifully read from cover to cover in your role as an EM, and had nothing to do one Saturday night. There's a myriad of record creation and proactive disclosure requirements of information within that Act. It also puts the onus on the CEO for ensuring that there's proper care and protection and maintenance of any records that are created under the Local Government Act and any other legislation. And there's 109-ish pieces of legislation that local government needs to administer, enforce or comply with. So, and I've read all of them because I just love it, because it's identifying where the record creation requirements are. So it's not just the Local Government Act, but there's all of the acts that Council has to deal with. There's also the Freedom of Information Act 1991, and that Act provides for the public, MPs and the media to have access to Council-held information. And of course there are exemptions under that Act where Council doesn't have to provide all the information. There's a schedule of exemptions. However, there is a lot of information that people can have access to. Now, there's a direct correlation between Council managing its records and information appropriately and their ability to meet the requirements of the Freedom of Information Act in the time frame that it's required for Council to make that determination. And without proper record keeping, often the right information isn't provided to the applicant, because Council has to give the applicant what it has in its custody, and if it's not an exempt document. And of course, if it's sitting in your email folders or at home on your drive, then Council's Freedom of Information Officer doesn't know that it exists. And if the applicant isn't happy with Council's determination, they can ask for an internal review, and that goes to the CEO. The CEO conducts the review and undertakes a report. If they are not happy with that, they can go to the Ombudsman. If they're not happy with the Ombudsman, they then can go to the District Court under the Act. There are so many complaints going to the Ombudsman about local government. And so the Ombudsman was, last year before, given more power, more money, more resources to investigate those complaints. And a lot of them were around information not being provided, because the poor old Freedom of Information Officer couldn't find it because it's stored in all different places and not in a central repository. So that Act can have a huge impact because you as elected members are subject to that as well. Your information can be subject to Freedom of Information application. There's also something new that's come about, and some of you may have had a session already with the Independent Commissioner Against Corruption. The office was established last year in September last year and has only been operational really for a year and a bit. The Act was enacted in 2012. That's had a huge impact on state government. It's having an impact on elected members as well, and the Commissioner's office is going around providing awareness sessions to elected members to inform them of some of the implications of the Act and what could occur. Now, there are, within ICAC, that provides for the Commissioner himself to have extensive powers to investigate and prevent corruption, misconduct and maladministration. That's fairly broad when you look at it, and it was in the media today about a former mayor, the current elected member in New South Wales, who's been investigated by ICAC in that state, and he challenged the findings of ICAC in the courts, and the courts have supported ICAC just today. That's come out, that ruling, and therefore he's soon to be an ex-elected member because of those findings. And it was really interesting to read that, because up until then, a lot of the conduct of elected members and even public officers have really not had the ability to be scrutinised by an external body that sits above the government. And ICAC is exactly that. So it's actually raised a lot of issues, and it does lead into records management, because the first thing ICAC will look for is the evidence of who said what, when, where. Was there something that was written that proves that there was maladministration or corruption or fraud or whatever it might be. And so it's not just administration, it is elected members that will be subject to ICAC investigations as well. And it's interesting because they not only are basing this on where they have a complaint from a member of the public or another agency, or where there's a report, and 19% of their reports and complaints in the first year were local government based. The other was state government, and some were MPs as well. So the 19%, of course, was spread across the councils. I'm not sure whether you're investigated or not. The difference with ICAC in South Australia is it's not, the investigations aren't made public. They're actually not disclosed, whereas interstate they are made public. So that's the difference. You don't know you're being investigated sometimes until too late, and it happens. They're not only doing investigations based on reports, they're also doing intelligence gathering. So they're looking for patterns of behaviour and areas where they believe there could be misconduct, corruption or maladministration, and they'll investigate that. And they've got huge powers. So it's been really interesting to know that they can actually tap phones and things like that. So just be careful what you say. So that's really having an impact. People are now saying, okay, we need to really articulate what we are doing, record our decisions and our actions, and make sure we are meeting probity when we do these sorts of things, so that we can avoid being investigated by ICAC, really. And the ICAC information sessions are really good to go along, because they do tell you what is considered maladministration and corruption. Some people don't know that it's not okay to accept free tickets to the Crows box consistently and the trip to Bali from a tenderer that might be, you might be signing and agreeing their tender. So some people think that's okay, and not understanding that that could be deemed...
I'm sorry, I'm not sitting on this side.
Somebody else as I say that.
When is someone's partner?
Okay. So why should you manage your records, and why does council need to manage its records? It's not just about compliance and the need to do that. It's actually about providing a history of this council, which is equally as important. When I worked for state government, I worked within state records of South Australia, and it was really interesting to see the records of local government being looked at in a different light. It just wasn't about the local community and local historians saying, I want to see about what happened with this town hall, when it was built and who the builder was. It's actually much broader than that. It forms part of the social history of the state and the nation, and I was absolutely shocked at how many international applications for information and research was being conducted on local government records in this state. People writing novels or just wanting to know information. So it's not just local genealogists and history buffs knowing the history of this council. It's much, much broader than that. And it helps with future policy making for state government and the Commonwealth government as well, to know what happened in this council. And you're all creating history. Your names are now in history, which is nice to know that in 200 years' time somebody's going to research prospect and you will be there. Photos of you will be there. Digital, the recording might even be there. So it's also not only about the history, but it's about supporting business processes. And you may know from your own work, your own working history, that you do go back to information to be able to say, what was that business process, and what did we do, what did we decide, how much did we spend? If you don't have that information, it takes a lot of your time and effort to reconstruct all of that. Records also provide the evidence of accountability in actions. Now that can be for legal discovery, and I remember when I worked at this council, we were in the courts a lot. I'm not sure why. The LGA used Prospect Council as a test case against Telstra and Optus for the overhead wires back then. And so I had a CEO that used to be yelling down the phone at me saying, could you find this document from 1962 and the lawyers needed it yesterday. And I think, 1962, where would I find that? Yes, in a box under the building in the dirt. That's where we would find it. So for legal discovery and litigation, it was amazing how you don't realise what's needed when you are defending a case or actually maybe prosecuting someone else. Ombudsman's investigations I've already mentioned, and of course the Ombudsman, as I said, more scrutiny now on local government. ICAC investigations, so I've already mentioned that. The Commissioner has just released his first annual report, and he specifically, your elected members are mentioned in that report, and your code of conduct is mentioned, and local government staff code of conduct. But he also specifically references that if anybody conducts an offence under the State Records Act and doesn't manage their records in their role as an elected member or a public officer in the way that they should, it is corruption under the ICAC Act. And I found that statement really interesting. I thought, yes, thank you for that, Commissioner, because that will lead to people paying more attention to what they're doing and their requirements in terms of record keeping. You also have inquiries and royal commissions as well. And the Royal Commission into the institutional response to the allegations of abuse of children has also had an impact on the record, believe it or not, of local government and state government and the Commonwealth, of course. Because what it's done has placed an embargo on the destruction of any records that relate to a staff member, any elected member, and which puts them in a place and a time. So where they could and may have had contact with children. It's not just about people who are mandatory notifiers and work with children. It is much, much broader than that. And it's been quite interesting, and Crown Solicitor's Office in South Australia is leading this, and its part comes under the State Records Act, and those records are embargoed. And it's also about keeping proper records as well, things like diaries, timesheets for staff, attendances at a meeting like this, not that a child is here, but where a child could be on the premises. And it even means in the back office where children don't attend because somebody might bring their children in after work or something like that. It's quite broad. I was really shocked at the scope of this. And even one of my clients, Port Augusta Council, they put in for the destruction of their nursing home patient records that have been dead for 10 years. As the disposal schedule says, you can destroy those records 10 years after the patient's died. It got refused by Crown Law to be destroyed because that person may have molested a child whilst that child was visiting the nursing home, because the council runs the nursing home. I found that very odd because a client file shows their temperature when they did certain movements and not who visited them, nothing about that. So I couldn't see the relevance of that file for that particular, for the Royal Commission. So it's been an interesting learning curve. So it's much, much broader than just we have a business need to keep these records, to manage these records. We start to have inquiries and Royal Commissions adding to the complexity of the records that we keep. We're now having to work with councils to say, if you have volunteers, we've got to make sure you're keeping good records of those volunteers and that you've started the police history check and that you've got when they attend certain programs in council and then who attended those programs as well. All those records now have to be created and kept. So it adds to the problems that council then face in managing records. So it adds to your record keeping as well as elected members about making sure proper records are kept of when you are attending council functions in your role as an elected member. Does that work? Yes.
How the nursing home and that it was required to destroy after 10 years.
Yes.
Act, was it?
Yes.
Well, about which precedents of acts come Oh, one over the other.
One over the other. Well, the records of council are subject to what's called a disposal schedule, and that includes your records, the records that you create and receive in the conduct of your role as an elected member. That disposal schedule sits under the State Records Act, and the responsibility for the disposal of council's records by applying this disposal authority is the responsibility of the information management team. They're the ones that make that decision, and they have to get approval before they do that. There's a whole lot of processes that have to go through. So as an elected member, you just can't, at the end of a term or the end of the week or the end of the year, go, oh, I don't need these anymore, and I've got a slide on this, and I'll just throw those in the shredder or hit delete, 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 because they don't mean anything more to me, but they might, and they do, to this council. And so there is an authorised schedule that comes under the State Records Act. So, and the disposal schedule that says records relating to placing a staff member or an elected member in a certain place and time, that sits over the top of this schedule, and it just gives them a longer retention period. And that'll be until 2023 when the Royal Commission is due to be completed, and then it'll be reviewed at that time, and it might be for even longer after this. So inquiries do open a can of worms for elected members and council staff. Residents and ratepayers as well, you're accountable to them, and the records that you manage, create and control, also you have to show your accountability in actions for them as well. So you have a records management policy that you have been given as an attachment, and your policy statement says, as an elected member, the business activities of the elected members of the City of Prospect, of the City of Prospect, will be documented, recorded and managed to protect the integrity, enhance the efficiency and preserve the history and provide a business context of council. So it's very wordy, but that's what it's the basic pretext of it. It's an umbrella policy. The scope is that it applies to the records and information created and received by elected members in the conduct of their role as an elected member. Not your personal information, so if you get an invitation to go to a party, not as an elected member, that's not included in this. If you get an invitation as an elected member, or you receive correspondence in relation to an issue or a project or whatever it might be, as an elected member, then that's what we're talking about here. It includes electronic communications which are relevant to the information gathering, resident communication, policy formulation or decision-making processes of council, and are part of the scope of this policy. So your responsibilities and accountability. The Mayor and elected members are responsible for ensuring that, one, you create good records in the first place. And you're looking horrified at that.
How do we go about doing that? So if I get an email from a resident,
Yes.
an issue,
Yes.
I have to keep that?
Yes, you do. You have to, and we'll talk about how you will keep that. You'll actually be sending that through to Council's administration for them to capture that in the system.
You bet. Just on that, Wendy, yes, if this issue is reported to CEO or of any officers, the minute it hits our email, it is trimmed. So if you reported a pothole, pass on a pothole, when it gets to council officers, it will go through our trim system. Every email will be trimmed accordingly.
So if you receive, we'll talk about the process of how you manage that, but it's about creating a record in the first place. So you're talking about receiving a record. If you had a phone call from a resident and they were really irate and upset about something, and you decided to record that and write a file note about that, then you're creating a record. You might do that electronically and save the Word document. Then it's about, once you've done that, you've created a record. And when you do create that record, it's making sure that it's created as soon as practical after the event, and that it's meaningful and accurate, and when anyone looked at it, they know that you've written your name as an elected member, your full name, also that who the person was that made the complaint and full details of that. Because it's no good saying, oh, Mary rang and complained about the pothole, and, sorry, I don't know your Christian name, but, sorry? Monica? Monica. And then Monica, because that doesn't give us any context about who the person was, where that pothole is, and really who you are. It just says it's Monica. So it's creating it, and it's not creating records for creation's sake. I'm not saying every time you talk to a resident, you're doing your shopping on Saturday morning and somebody comes up to you and says, there's a tree fallen out front of my house, can you get someone to do something about it? So if they stop, I'll just write that down. You would probably say to them, you can actually go online and put in a complaint online and advise them to do that. Then it's out of your hands as an elected member, or ask them to email you, or you might want to email one of council's offices when you get back home. You'll work out your way of recording that. So it's not about creating records for creation's sake. It's about, in the conduct of your role, making sure that they are meaningful and accurate. Given that, it's not about holding them yourself as a record. It's ensuring they end up in the corporate records management system. Now, it's been really interesting to work across local government and hear different stories. There have been cases where there's been a lack of evidence submitted to court because records were sent to the mayor only, and the mayor kept them for himself. I don't mean this mayor, I mean another mayor in another council, and kept them to themselves. And then when there was a legal issue and the evidence was submitted by council, there was a huge gap in the evidence, and judges have been very scathing of that, and saying that the council needs to have the full picture. How can it work, and how can it defend itself, and how can it have full knowledge of what's going on in the community?
So, if one of the lovely residents out there knows it's my birthday and sends me an email, happy birthday, Christina, hope
that's personal. It is not really a record of council business. And this is what this is about. It's the processes, business processes of council. If they sent you an email that said, happy birthday, Christina, by the way, there's sewage pouring out of, wherever. and council staff get those sorts of emails. Hi, how are you? Work the Crows great on Saturday. Now to business. So sometimes there's a mix between personal and professional. We try to encourage people not to do that because it doesn't look great. But, yes, if the happy birthday message, no, that's not a record of council.
And what if they send it to my private email?
Yes. Is your private email advertised legit? No. So that it should be. You could forward it to your council email, but even if it was to your private email, it still is a record, and then you would do this next step, which is actually ensuring it gets into council for capture. It's about you not using your private email for the business of council. And the Commissioner of ICAC mentioned that in his annual report, that he's finding that a lot of people are using their personal emails, MPs and elected members and some staff of government using personal emails to conduct business. So it sits outside of freedom of information. Yes?
Yeah, I'm still a little bit concerned because there's a lot of crossover. So, for example, I've stood on energy efficiency and sustainability and heritage housing and those kind of things. I work at Tonsley TAFE.
Yes.
I'm on LinkedIn. I have a profile.
Yeah.
So there's crossover. So my LinkedIn profile, I may be connected to lots of people that I may encounter in council or outside of council.
Yes.
So I don't identify myself solely as a councillor prospect, but crossover.
But if you do receive or send and create records in relation to your role as an elected member, then as much as possible you should be using your elected member email account. And it should then be furnished to this email address, to make sure that it gets captured.
We didn't actually get our elected member email accounts till obviously after we were elected.
Yes, no.
So a lot of our communication, a lot of their email that we sent out was
while you're you weren't yet an elected member at that time though, so that doesn't count.
But that has embedded into the community now. A lot of people will
respond with that. Yes. Well, in that case, when you do receive that, you can say, in future, could you please send all emails to your email address? And it's just making sure that whilst it's hitting your personal email address, that maybe when you respond, you use your council email address so that they then start to get that into that email address.
The other thing I do is I just CC everything to Sadie, who then manages the record keeping on my behalf as the mayor. But I didn't realise we had this EM filing address, so you could CC everything to that, even on your personal email. CC that in, and it'll come up with your prompt once you put in capital E, capital M, it'll go
And that's relating to just council business and not you saying, yes, I'm coming to the party Saturday night.
To look at your sewerage.
While I'm there, having a drink. Exactly, Wendy.
Just on this,
Parties you go.
just on
One
the,
more one.
yeah, just on the comments that David made. So if executive team needs to be CC on an issue, still continue to use the CC, and then we will be able to so that we can follow up if there's an issue that we need to be aware. This filing system basically goes straight to records for filing.
And this is not about if all of you receive the same email as you do. You get a generic email from, and it might be from the LGA or from whatever, and you all receive it. Then, and it's also to officers in council as well. Then there's no need to forward that on because that will be captured within council. And so if one is going to the mayor and a group of elected members, then you're relying on the mayor to make sure that that is getting into council's system. If you then respond just as yourself, then that response needs to come into council's records management system. So it's about looking at that and not flooding that email address with everything, but it's thinking about what you are receiving, what you are sending in your role as an elected member, but not multiple copies necessarily. Yes.
Yeah, I think somehow we still need some direction, or I would be seeking one, on the fact that, sure, I'm an elected member, you know, well known and blah, 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 but I do have a private life. I do have people that ask me for my private opinion, not my opinion as an elected member.
Yep.
So how does that figure in it? Yeah, I mean, you know, aren't you allowed, you know, to have a...
Yes. Oh, no, you are allowed to as well. And if you're giving your private opinion about something, and I mean, you would have to get legal advice to really get a good answer on that one. But if it's a private opinion on the side and it's not an official statement, once you document something in writing, then that could be accessed under freedom of information. And if you use your private email address, then that might be a bit different. But then, as the Commissioner says, you shouldn't be using your private email address in the conduct of council business. So I'm not sure how that goes with your own private opinion about something and advice. It is as you as an elected member. So I think there's a
I want to feel it goes to the perception of that person about your opinion. And it's pretty hard. They would expect you're giving it cognizant of your experience in council now over 25 years. It's pretty hard to defend that it was not related to that at all. And I just assume that they're asking me as the mayor. And this is a non-council issue, completely not council at all.
I mean, if it was, I want to put up a 10-storey development, what do you think? And in your private opinion is, well, I think that would be great. However, you have to go through council's planning law. So that is your private, opinion that it would be great. I wouldn't document that personally. I wouldn't put that in writing, but I thought it was great if I was an elected member because I know it can't go through. But I hope. So,
there'd be a lot of phone calls instead of emails. So.
Well, interestingly enough, I was working in ICAC and they were listening to phone recordings in a special room.
But they have to tell you first.
No, ICAC don't have to tell you. They have huge power.
How are they different than the other Royal Commissions?
They're different, I suppose.
The Royal Commissions in the corruption, New South Wales and in the union movement have to notify it.
Different states.
It's different state, different legislation. It's not open like interstate. Not can ask ICAC about that because
I know.
Informing you of what I know.
They're really nice.
Yeah.
So if we get a something from a resident, so potholes or a development or whatever, and we reply to them, it would make good sense to reply to the resident and CC and filing.
If you don't need any action from us.
Well, often I just reply to them and say, look, I don't know enough to tell you, so let me talk to the director. So that's usually my reply, and there's no point giving that to the director until I email them and say, give them a context. So even I just reply and say that to them, put it in EM filing.
Yep. The council needs to know how many complaints we had about the pothole on Azalea Street, for instance, for actually many actually, for scheduling, our maintenance program, needing to look at the complaints
across council. So,
but we would form like you. Yeah, this is where I think we're still finding it difficult about if you're receiving that, and then normally what I would do would be I would then write on my council email or even some on my personal email address and contact the appropriate person and say a resident has told me about this pothole in Rose Street, so blah 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 about it.
but see, they have sent the original record to you. If that email that they've sent to you is a record of council now, because they've sent you the email. They've recorded that. And so that email record doesn't get into council's system, the original complaint. It's just your email, a separate email, rather than forwarding on that email to the appropriate person, which then gives the context underneath.
So what do we do about tweets?
Yes, tweets, and we need a content management system for tweets to be able to push that into the EDRMS, into the system.
Is there one, or are you suggesting?
I'm not sure whether there is one yet or not.
Can't EDR just follow? Can't Prospect just follow the tweeter?
The tweeter?
Yeah.
Tweetie. The tweetee?
Yeah. But it's about having the evidence of what was tweeted at a certain time.
Wouldn't a screenshot?
A screenshot would
be the thing to
do it, yes, of the content of the tweet.
Yeah. We're currently not capturing that information because of resource issue and whole heap of issue. So we're not recording the tweet.
What if you have some thing that says like on your private email thing on a footer and says that don't contact me on this email, anything to do with council, use my council email address.
Well, it's fine if they do use your personal, as long as you reply using your council email address.
See, on my Facebook twin, I'm sure others, I've got saying these are my personal views. So, yeah, I still don't think it's very clear about what you do personally as a person and then what you do, as an elected member, regardless.
A personal opinion about an issue, you are an elected member and therefore that has an impact on you.
When does that stop?
Well, I think
so 24 hours a day,
I think
4 years, you're an elected member. So even in your sleep, if you, sort of mumble something or other, my husband, he's here, and so I'm sort
Not recorded, not an email.
it gets to be a bit of a ridiculous point, really.
But I think it's a judgment call, as it is for the staff. It's a judgment call on every case. But if you believe that this is needed to be a record of council, because it's going to help to form policy, planning, maintenance, whatever it might be, or you never know what can end up in court or under investigation, and therefore do we have the complete picture, then it's going to be a judgment call on every elected member. But it's being aware that you can be subject to freedom of information, you can be subject to ICAC, you can be subject to the Ombudsman, to a Royal Commission. So there's all these areas that it's worth knowing that could occur, and it's your judgment call every day as it is.
It's a judgment call across the whole state for every elected member, and it comes down to common sense. Common sense and just best judgment, and you'll be fine. Really, you would know whether it's a council-related matter or not, and if it becomes a council-related matter over time, then you know it's time to forward it through. I just want to reiterate that address there, the EM filing, we don't scan that. I don't go through that and see what emails come through. So we need you to send stuff directly to us if you want to action it, as in myself or the directors. And we would only look at that by exception if we had to research a problem that had eventuated over a period of time. So
freedom of information.
I'd be thinking that we're going to be watching whatever anyone says here. We don't do that at all. It's only by exception. So.
And those emails, will be captured into the EDRMS by the information management staff, as they do for other records of council, and go into the appropriate area that relates to that particular issue. So,
yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. So if that email relates to pothole, even though we don't see it, it goes directly to the EM filing. If we tag up pothole on Edgeworth Street, it will come up, and that will be from elected filing. So that is just by topic.
And I think while you're finding your feet with it, there's absolutely no reason why you can't ask us, email through and say, I've got this email, I'm not sure, should I be keeping this? And we can give you guidance until you find your feet with it, and help you out with working out some of those grey areas.
So, to clarify, by default, any emails that we get from staff are already captured?
Correct.
Exactly.
Right, so if I get, the advice is that you need to disseminate. I always have this as solely used for council work, and my home computer is solely used for home stuff. So I disseminate the information, so there's very little crossover for me. But if I were to get an email on the old email address that was published before we got our council one, I would then best to forward it to here and then reply from here to the person, so that I don't have a muddiness between the two devices, so that it all sticks on here, and then send it to, and then CC it to EMF.
That's correct. If you do not require an action, CC to EMF.
You can get your personal address on your iPad, and then you can switch between, when you respond, you can switch between addresses as to which address you're responding from.
Yeah.
So you can just convert it to your exchange address.
I'm trying to keep everything just council on here.
But it's not actually about
Well,
the
that won't-
device,
that won't
it's about the
necessarily
email.
work.
It's about the email account, not the device.
Yeah.
Email account on your personal
Yeah.
Vice versa. That's a better way to do it. So that means anywhere you can get all of your emails, and you can decide from the whole batch of whatever accounts you're running, which ones you should be responding to with your council hat, and therefore your council address on.
Yeah.
And then you can decide whether to put CC, EM filing, or a director, and it's captured.
If you forward it to a director, it'll be captured instantly.
So anything coming from council is also automatically captured. It's just a matter of if we find something that's out of the circle, we need to bring it into the circle.
It's mainly something come directly to you.
Alison, you had a question?
So yeah, I was just if there's any way that I suppose the LGA can take the burden off new elected members, the tools for this information management. So I guess if you walk into an organisation where you're actually staff, there would be systems and processes and folders and places, repositories where you put information. As an elected member, you're working in your own computer or your own tablet, which we've just got. And also things like templates. So, maybe the council could supply elected members with standard templates that we could use. So when we do we are capturing those full things of details. Because I know all of us will be answering emails in a different way, at a different rate, and saving them in different places. So I think working outside the council is a lot harder than working within it.
It's not that complicated. You don't need to file. You can choose to have a filing system if you want, but to comply with this, you simply need to get it into trim.
CC,
Just CC it,
that's
have it
correct,
for you, and the system will file it for you. So if I were you, I certainly have not got a duplicate filing system of my own for council matters. I rely on this system.
Yeah.
So it's going to be retrieved or FOI, it's out of this system, not mine. So you don't overcomplicate it because you'll go nuts. Just CC that or get it to a director.
Or if you have a Word document, or if a resident hands you a letter directly, a hard copy letter, it's about submitting that so it gets scanned and put into the system. Yeah.
Alison, you're not necessarily referring to
Sorry.
you're not necessarily talking to compliance, you're talking about tools to help you do your job as an election member. Quite simply to this. So
I think there's that.
a cache of Word documents and hand email responses that you can customise. So it's a different thing, which is not the compliance you're talking about, the tools that might be available to help us do our job more effectively.
Yeah, because it's information management is part of it. I mean, the bigger picture is managing that information and also tweets and Facebook.
And SMS, how do you...
We could probably run a session on that. That's a good point. We could workshop that, I reckon. We'd probably...
And even things like Dropbox and stuff like that, is something you guys are looking at or not? Yeah?
Yes, we are. We have a few on cloud. They are mainly for large plans at the moment. Planning plans.
What seems to work well. So we're looking at all that. I think you're right. We'll need to come back with more information and discuss with you the best way to go about it.
So that was one of the things I noticed with I was talking to Talis. If you want to save a document out of an email and put it in a single place instead of having to trawl through the emails, the iPad infrastructure doesn't necessarily allow that. So Dropbox will be obviously a place to work
We are
with that.
requesting that for large documents so that elected members can actually just download it.
Even minor documents as well.
It's not it doesn't do it, it's just does it differently.
Yeah.
You need to know how to do that.
Yeah, I'm a drag it into a folder guy, and that way I've got it in the folder, but iPad is not that.
It's easier, but unless you're shown, you won't know. So we can incorporate that in the same session.
Cool.
Okay, Wendy, I think we've got 15 more minutes on this.
Oh, yes, right. So say I'm just, how do we get over privacy and confidentiality so that if a resident contacts me, but they just say, look, could you just find out, you know, I'm a bit concerned about something or other, could you make an inquiry on my behalf about something, so they don't want to contact council directly. So they do it on, you know, send it to me on my personal one. So
that's when you'd be making a judgment call.
That's where I make the judgment.
Yep, you're making the judgment call. Yep. And when the records are captured into the system, there are access controls to ensure that staff do not see information that they don't have rights to see. And the information management staff sign a code of conduct to ensure that nothing's divulged from that system.
I think that's a pretty tricky question. You'd want to be pretty careful about that. You've got to think what would the Commissioner want access to? And if they can't find access to that point of origin of perhaps a whistleblower, a complaint, or something ends up being a code of conduct, they might be critical about that.
Well, they might just have to be critical of it then.
That's exactly where your judgment
That's judgment call for me. Yeah. Okay. So that's about making sure that records are created and captured. This is also about retention and disposal. So we talked about, one, we create them, one, we make sure they're getting into the system, but we also need to know about the retention and disposal, which I touched on briefly. So there is to be no intentional deletion, destruction or alteration of official records. So once it's a record of this council and you've created it or you have received it in your role as an elected member, then it's ensuring that under the State Records Act you don't destroy or alter or remove from custody any of those records. They're only to be disposed of in accordance with the Act and by authorised information management staff. That's why they have to be furnished to council for them to be able to manage them, for them to apply the disposal to them to determine what is permanent retention, what is temporary, what can be destroyed and when can it be destroyed, and going through those official channels and filling in all the documentation.
So the minutes and information they send us for tonight, I can wipe that off.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So duplicates don't necessarily apply to that. It just depends on the duplicate, of course, but of course council has that responsibility for capturing and I've captured them.
And if you need to review it again tomorrow, you can just get a copy from us. So you can watch them.
And there's good discipline and foresight and due diligence. Then there's just a bit of,
Yes, that's not, I don't need that.
Well, if it's not deleted, it just sits in your emails.
Yeah.
And I've increasingly stopped deleting things because the search engines are so much better now. Will that suffice in terms of state records, given that it's coming through the exchange address?
No, if it's not captured into council's system, then the system has the capacity to determine when things are due for destruction and what the retention period is based on where it's actually captured. Can't do that sitting in your email folders, and no one else knows it exists but you. And so, and what we don't want to have happen is when your term ends or you decide you no longer want to be the mayor, that then they're inundated with a flood of thousands of records to then go through and capture into the system. And it's a missing piece of evidence during the life of the record as well. So it shouldn't be that it's just left there. If it's a duplicate because you've forwarded it on to records and it's captured, well, that's fine. It's already captured.
Wendy, is it fair to say that we can start from now? We don't have to go back?
Retrospectively,
What's your
if
view?
it's business critical, then I think you should go retrospective, and even council staff are having to do that with their records.
Give it a month.
Yeah. But it's about looking at, if it's an issue you think is going to be contentious or business critical, then yes. But if not, then it could be just a gap. So it's illegal the illegal destruction of records carries penalties under the State Records Act. If prosecuted, penalties will apply to the individual elected member involved. It doesn't go to the CEO, doesn't go to the council as a whole, it's an individual, even if they're no longer the elected member. So it can be, basically, if you're in the Bahamas dipping a pina colada, I'm not sure what the extradition agreement is, but it could apply.
Wendy,
So under the Act...
Wendy, can we just go back one slide?
Yes.
Didn't quite touch on the hard copy.
Oh, I didn't?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Sorry. Yes, just one slide. Yeah, just the very last.
The hard copy record?
Yes.
Submitted to the governance officer?
That's right. So the hard copy may come to you. As per the policy, we will give you stacks of cut up form templates, or you need to scan it with your hard copy, pass to any of us through the counter, and we will make sure that that is scanned. That is if a resident given you a hard copy letter. All right, you don't need to scan it yourself. We'll do it for you. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. Now, the other thing too is if you are forwarding an email on to that email address, if you can send it as an attachment where possible, that would be great. Because if you're forwarding that email on, you're saying to this email address from you, when in actual fact it came from Mary Bloggs to you as an elected member. And so that won't be getting captured appropriately. It'll be the forwarded email that goes in rather than an attached email. You can send a new email to this address at the attachment of the email you received from the elected member, and then the team can grab that email attachment and put it in as a record, proper record.
Can that happen automatically with email rules? Can we,
No, it's an attachment, because when you hit forward it just...
I mean, yeah, okay. Can you have it set up as a proper extended rule?
Not sure about that.
You test it. That might just be your own record management.
I just, because I got a letter from a resident today and I responded, so to comply, I've just sent it to the director and to EM filing.
Yeah, that's okay if you're doing CCing it in.
Bounced and said that it doesn't exist.
Oh, okay.
We have to check that.
Have to check that. May not.
Yeah, the migration is happening.
That's why.
So,
yeah. Okay.
9 o'clock.
It's migration all times of...
So, under the State Records Act, we're back to disposal. The penalties under the Act, where there is the intentional damage, alteration or destruction or removal of council's records without authorisation to do so, you could be subject to a $10,000 fine or 2 years in prison. Now, in this state, since 1997 when the Act first was enacted, there have been no prosecutions. There have been a lot of referrals to the Minister, but there hasn't been any prosecutions. There have, however, been interstate. But with ICAC, I think that will change. I think because the Commissioner has identified that in his annual report, I think that will change with time. So there will be prosecutions on the Act. There's intentional though. So just the slip of a delete is not necessarily intentional. Access and privacy. Access to council-held information by elected members will be requested through the CEO. And that's under the Local Government Act 1999. All access to information comes through the CEO. A record may contain information that is confidential in nature and should not be divulged to other parties. And being aware of that, and you are aware of that with your confidential meetings and minutes. Aware of confidentiality and sensitivity when managing, accessing or divulging information. And Council has a privacy policy and that applies. Local government is not subject to the Commonwealth Privacy Act. You have your own privacy policy that applies. And the community expects that you will use the information you collect about them for the reason that you have collected it. So the national privacy principles are incorporated into your privacy policy. So it's about making sure that that applies when you're divulging information. Requests ultimately from the public come through freedom of information where the information is not already publicly available. So if you do get requests for information, then you need to refer them to the council office, unless of course it's publicly available information. Any questions about access? Integrity. Just letting you know that all incoming mail will be opened by the information management team, and that includes those that are marked private and confidential. And then if it's not a council record, they will submit it to you. But it's coming into council, addressed to you as an elected member, and they do the same for staff hard copy mail as well.
So just to note, that has been an issue with some elected members in years gone by. Just as long as you understand that's the policy, and it should be fine.
So when you get the Scientology ones, you'll throw them away. You haven't got them for about 12 months. Get rid of mine before I get them.
This is just reinforcing that you're only using council systems for official correspondence created and received in the conduct of your role in council. That is not using your personal email accounts in the conduct of business. And this one is not really about records management, but it's about protecting council's integrity, and that's making sure you avoid writing and recording derogatory or personal comments on records, in emails, on post-it notes, because that may be released to the public or investigating agency, and has been in the past. And there's been quite a few cases and stories in the Advertiser, one particular case where a certain mayor of a particular council wrote 357 derogatory emails about the CEO, and they were going through council system, they were discovered, and there was a defamation case, and that was settled out of court. And that council's still wearing the brunt of that because it doesn't look good on the third page of the Advertiser when those emails are transcribed. So it's about being aware of that anything you write, be happy to see it on the front page of the Advertiser tomorrow or in the Messenger Press. Just think about that.
Safe they don't come to my house.
So how do we get on then if you're on the CEO's performance review and there's a external consultant handling it, and you're in your role as an elected member,
yes,
it's all done in confidence?
Yes, and it would be held in confidence. So that's not an issue. You're not saying anything derogatory, and you do have to have a personal opinion, of course. That's quite different to getting a letter from Mrs. Bloggs and saying something that, you believe she was crazy, or using that sort of language. You think that, but it's not fact. So it's quite different.
Sorry, Mrs. Bloggs.
You might think that, but you don't record it. So there's a difference with that, and those records are kept quite confidential and not accessed by the CEO. Right, to meet the requirements of the State Records Act and other relevant legislation. So council, sorry, I just got lost with the where we were there. So council's administration has a responsibility, sort of very similar to you, but much broader, in that they have to provide evidence of council's compliance with the legislation, with all of the standards and all the other requirements. So the administration has a responsibility to meet the requirements of the State Records Act and the other relevant legislation as well, but also to implement adequate records management practices outlined in the standard that sits under the Act. And they've got that responsibility, and they need to be measured on a regular basis and surveyed by State Records of South Australia. So council has a reporting responsibility, and that report can end up going to the Minister of Local Government if council continues to be non-compliant with the legislation and with the standards as well. So there's a responsibility there to maintain good systems, good processes and practices.
I don't know if anyone sitting around me, but I got a letter from, don't know who, but the people that do the CEO's review of that, that other staff, and I got told, different what you, I got told to reply to them. I could have replied online or with paper, and that it was going to be confidential, and when they finished and took the details off, it was going to be destroyed. So it says that's a lie.
Sorry, what was that?
Well, you'd have to help me who the
consulting firm undertaking that review? Yes. So,
and the results would be, I think what Alan's saying, the results would be aggregated with nobody's name.
And then what we put in will be destroyed.
Yes, and that's obviously signed off on and agreed to. So they're not in breach of the State Records Act by doing that. That may be their policy. That's if it's in the policy and they're a private sector company, I'm assuming. Yeah, exactly. So that private companies aren't subject to any of this.
Couldn't spell Mark's name anyway.
Yeah, I noticed it.
Right, next. So this is our second to last slide. We're nearly there. In managing records as corporate information, as your role as elected member, this is about improving the efficiency and productivity of council. Now, it may not seem that way, given I've just said you've got these extra things to do, and it may not feel that way. But ultimately, when the information is managed in an enterprise-wide system, it does improve the efficiency of the council. It gives council the ability to leverage information for better decision-making in the future. And it's nothing worse than trying to scramble to find out why something happened 10 years ago and then trying to make decisions around that when you don't have that information available. It's protecting the integrity and availability of business-critical information and preserving and harnessing the corporate knowledge, history and memory. And council meeting all of its obligations under legislative, regulatory, litigation and contractual. And it's about improving our customer service because ultimately that's the major role of council is customer service. And finished. And questions? Any more questions?
Just a point of clarification to be really clear. So if Callis wrote an email to Alison, and then Alison sent it on to Christina, for example, and it went backwards and forwards between them, that has to be forwarded through this process, or can it be kept separate? If they're talking about a council-related issue,
if they're talking
between themselves, it's like they're having a conversation, but
ultimately, you know, this goes back to your view about, you know, just our opinion and it's a bit of banter. There are certain emails, even within council staff, that don't end up as records because it's, what do you think about this? No, I don't agree. We better meet and discuss this next week and form an agenda or whatever. That sort of back and forth banter isn't considered a record because it would be done over the phone normally. However, if there's something in there, might be a line in there that says, I think council's at risk if we go ahead with this, and I think we should, you know, formalise this discussion, then that's the sort of thing that people might be looking for and might make it a formal record. So it is always a judgment call, and we, in council, we get staff that are squirrels and throw everything they ever create into the management system, and then we get the resistors that say, well, no, my email's not a record. And so it is the judgment call. It's thinking about what will be needed if there is an investigation or an inquiry, and often we can't tell what that will be at the time.
The point I wanted to make was that there are times when it's going to be quite fine to have those minor conversations without having to get too bureaucratic.
Yes,
when it
exactly.
crosses the line in your own judgment, that you just circulate it through that.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do up some flowcharts too to assist to determine whether it's going to be a record or not a record. You know, whether it's been to a council staff member or it's come from a council staff member, and then the flowchart would go from there.
Yes, that would help. But yes, it is a judgment call. But now you've had your information management session. So.
We are running out of time. Are there any other critical questions?
No, I just want to catch up on what you're saying there, because the issue of coming to a meeting with bias or having worked outside of council to arrive at a decision-making position is in contravention of the Act.
It's different. Yeah.
So if councillors are conversing with each other electronically and forming a view, I'm not quite sure that your ease of not having to record that would be correct. I would have thought there's probably a couple of things happening there which are quite...
I think that would only be if, say, 3 or 4 and said, oh, well, are we all going to vote this way? You know, let's all vote this way. That would be caucusing outside and trying to do that. But I think if you're just trying to explore, you know, again, you know...
It was something like, well, I think we should have an event to acknowledge a particular person for their service. You know, what do you think? And that goes back and forth. Well, that's where it's just a conversation about that. It's not a council decision making. It's not a report that's going up to council. It's more about, I think this would be a lovely idea as elected members, should we suggest this? And therefore, is that a record? Well, the initial conversation maybe not, but then the official proposal to do that would be.
Fine line. That could be quite a controversial decision. Even that simple thing.
Yeah.
So I'd just exercise some caution around that.
I think that's something we might look at closely. Okay, we're running out of time, I think. No other questions of Winnie? If not, Winnie, that was really informative. Thanks very much. And
Good, thank you, and good luck.
So with that records management,
Encouraging, isn't it?
good luck.
we will now present the policy to the council. So if you have any queries, email us. We can tidy it up. If not, it will be presented to the December council for adoption.
So we don't need any more information on number 2 either?
Yep, we have dealt with in that one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Leads us on to item number 3, which is the terrific 2015 update. Carolyn.
Right, I just wanted to kick things off on this item. I'll introduce Carolyn for those of you who haven't met her. She's our Manager of Arts, Gallery and Events, and pretty much the driving force of council staff behind the terrific Prospect event. We're here essentially tonight for 2 elements of discussion around Terrific. One is an update on how we're progressing for the 2015 event, because it's getting close and excitement is building. And part 2 of the discussion is the 2016 event and whether or not we as a council would like to put our hand up for a stage start, a stage finish, or some other element of the to it and under. So with that, I'll throw over to Carolyn, who will run us through a presentation.
Hi. It's fairly brief. It's mainly just stats and numbers, and also just seeking your ideas around us needing to put in a bid with no obligations by the end of December if we were to want to be in the running to have a stage start 2016. So this is what I've just said. In 2014, many of you were at the event, but we attracted over 21,000 people. That's seen an increase from our first event, which we think was around 7,000 people, of about 25,000 people a year, and that has been steady and consistent. And we still get demands from traders and public and clubs and groups to be involved. Many people see it as a great benefit for not only their business or club or their enterprise, but also a fantastic way for Prospect to put itself on the map. It really does showcase everything that's great about living in Prospect, and we have a range of ways that people can be involved, right from our service clubs can attend and have sausage sizzles, etc., at no charge, considered as a charitable organisation, right through to if you are a trader within Prospect Council area, you pay one fee. If you're a trader that wants to come from outside of Council Prospect area, you pay over double that. That way we protect and respect the traders that live and do business in Prospect, and if you love our event so much, you'll pay to come, and they are paying to come. And it's a free activity. You can come and have a whole evening and virtually spend no money. You can bring a picnic, or there's plenty on offer with regard to food and things to purchase and novelties, as well as all of our programs on our 4 stages and our extended site Quattro circuit are all free. So at the moment, this is the update of where we are with sponsorship, and I've just signed off on the poster, which has hand around, which has got a range of sponsors on the bottom. Our sponsorship income budget for 2014-15 is $45,000. We've currently got about $52,500 as cash. We've got about another 17 in kind. I don't put the in kind up because really in kind gives us toilets and rubbish removal for free. It helps us offset costs of mostly infrastructure, and then also provides like incentives. So it doesn't, with regard to the toilets and the waste, it does affect our bottom line, but otherwise I'm normally just talking cash. We also have exceeded our trader site fees. So Jen Buchan in Economic Development's done a brilliant job, and we've exceeded that by nearly $2,000. And she got married last weekend. She's off on her honeymoon, and we've had probably 3 or 4 external traders now wanting to come in. We're pretty much at capacity. We will do what we can to fit them in, but there's a point in which we say if you haven't, you know it's coming. If you're not in by now, you're going to have to either take what you can get, or we will put you on the list for next time if there is a next time.
Good to create a sense of anticipation. But just to dwell on the sponsorship numbers, we were worried that because we didn't have a race start that we'd suffer here.
Yeah.
But the converse is true. We are, 18% up on sponsorship without the race start, which is extraordinary. Hats off to you. You've done a great job.
Yeah, we've just shifted. Some sponsors came on board because it was really important to them to be associated with the race start. We've kind of moved back from that. Those sponsors have gone on, but others have come in because they want to be associated with Prospect. So we've sort of traded them back and forth. But again, Santos Tour Down Under are a brilliant organisation to be involved with, and some of you may have seen my presentation. I can't remember when it was, but we got a letter from Santos Tour Down Under saying that pretty much we would get everything as far as access to the tour village, opportunities for Oppie, which is their mascot, to come to our event, opportunities for some special sort of visits and things associated with the tour without actually having to buy a stage start. So they want us in their event fixture because we are the only event in their official program, and we are the only event that is on their rest day, which means they've got, you know, several 100,000 people, is that too many, here for the event, and nothing to give them on the rest day except for terrific prospects. So that again is a fantastic bonus for us, and that's in their program. So I've done a bit of, so not having a race start is a budget savings for us. Certainly the main saving is in our stage start fee, which is $15,000, which was in the budget, which we now don't have to pay. We've done a budget estimate with regard to not having a stage start. Now, because we have the event, we're bringing everything in and we hold it for the period of the event and then we bump it out. The infrastructure that we use for the stage start morning is already here. To keep much of that infrastructure on site for an extra 6 or 8 hours actually is not a big cost to us. The big cost is really the labour that's required to bring it in and take it out, and also there is some extra cost to us in a way by having to completely clear everything out before the road opens again at what we're saying is 5 a.m. on the Tuesday morning, so we can get all our road sweepers through and get the road clean for the traffic to start at 6 a.m. So, but if we were to just do a stage start, then we would have to bring all that infrastructure in, toilets, fencing, security, traffic management and all of that just for that period, and that is a lot more expensive to bring it in for one event. We were spreading it over the 2 events. So whilst the savings perhaps haven't been, they don't add up. I think that should say 24. Sorry, I've got a typo there.
The 15K stage start doesn't seem to be showing up in the difference. In fact, no start is more expensive for some reason. That one I really don't believe.
No, that's the savings.
Yeah, the same.
So under other,
We've saved $213,000.
so the no start column is supposed to be our savings.
Right. Still doesn't add up.
It's actually 25,581.
Sorry, that is terribly embarrassing and doesn't actually look good. I will get that corrected to you and get that to you. But it's 25,000 is what I was working with as our savings for that. So about 10,000 in infrastructure costs and 15,000 with the stage start.
Quick question, Helen, in regards to cost, does that include the staff costs? Like, is it
1 or 1.5 role, like to
It
run?
doesn't include me, and it doesn't. It does, however, include Sally Ann, who does all our logistics.
Right.
It doesn't, however, include our depot staff because we're such a small council. Staff, for example, the depot and the maintenance people look at the requirements of the site in their timing of kind of regular maintenance programs and put them towards that period. And other staff are kind of released from their normal duties for the day to assist with the event. So if you're already employed, then you're made available. But any external contractors or specialist staff we need are included.
So yeah, but we could get access to that for staff components.
Yeah. You get a report that says how many staff hours went to it, and you get a report that tells you how many volunteer hours go to it, and there is an estimate done on that amount, but that's not included in this budget.
That report, Karen, comes out well after the...
About March, yeah. So once we've got all of our...
That's a report to council.
Yeah. So it's a full evaluation report.
And that's when we get the in-kind contribution, which is quite, a lot.
That's right. That's when that's reported as well. Yeah.
So when do we have to make a decision on this next stage then?
Okay. Usually at end of December, beginning of January, an email will go out actually shortly saying that if we wish to put in a bid for a stage start, and they give us a date, it normally happens before the next Tour Down Under event, so it'll happen before it starts on the 17th of January. So we can put in a bid for a stage start. There's no obligation, there's no financial commitment to that, just puts us in the mix when they're starting to do their deliberation, or Mike Turner specifically, their deliberation about the stage start. Stage starts are very much connected to the route that he wants. The route for the cycling is what drives everything else to get the best race possible for him and for our international. I'm really sorry about that. I will send you a correct
Just
response.
before you head off, Carol, I've got some more questions, and I've got one, but...
Carolyn, did we bid for a stage start and didn't get one, or what was the feedback as to why we weren't chosen?
We'd had it for 3 years, and the route that Mike Turner wanted did not come through Prospect. If he had a route that was coming through Prospect, then we would have got one.
I'll have a go at that, because I did explain it to someone this afternoon. There are 6 legs to the race. 2 of them are tied up. One's on Papringa because of Wollonga Hill, and the start and the finish is entirely in Wollonga. Works well. The 6th one is in the city. The start and the finish is in the city in a very prominent location. It used to be by the festival centre, then it was
East End.
Yeah, East End. Not where the Sunday night thing is, East End different. That leaves 4 stages. They like to finish in a dramatic place where there's a hill. We don't have any hills. So really we're only a player for one of the 4 starts. If all 4 of the races start from a metro location, then we're a player for all 4. This year they started one in the Barossa and went all around the Barossa. So we're not going to be a player for those all. So that was only 3. So you can assume that there'll be a maximum of 4, maybe 3 each year that we're eligible to bid for. Eligible in the sense, if that makes sense. We don't have any coastline, vineyards, mountains, castles, chalets. So the aerial visuals for us are not strong enough or compelling enough for them to want to have a race that starts bang in Prospect and go through a plane and go through the track. So we're a race neutral start. So you think if they're going to start something north, we're a good race neutral start location for a northern leg. If they're going to go south, we're probably not, because they'd have to race neutral from us through the city to the start of the toll gate, for instance. Okay? So there's a lot about how the race is being established in its race sense that impacts on whether we make sense at all. So because we're race neutral, we are down the pecking order. Campbelltown didn't do it for years and years and years. All of a sudden put the hand up. Mike Turner went, I've been waiting for this moment because Corkscrew Hill is up behind Campbelltown. and he had them finishing on the downhill into Campbelltown, and he said, fantastic. So they won it 2 years in a row without doing a lot other than saying we're interested, because he strategically was really good for him. We have to play a lot harder at getting it, and we don't have any control over the race route or any natural features. And I think we lost it. We were pretty chuffed that we got it. To get it 2 years in a row was pretty impressive. They came in the second year, looked at our party, and I remember them saying, this is so fantastic, you're making this incredibly difficult for us. So we won it the third year against all expectations. So it didn't surprise me that we didn't get it the fourth year. So what happens next time, who knows? It's only up to us to put our hand up, but we don't design any of the legs. Yeah.
So what we did win was lots of concessions with our street party, though, didn't we? So we won recognition as a Tour Down Under event, and that's still pretty significant.
This one coming up,
yeah.
Yes.
That's still pretty significant.
So the party's the night before? Is that how it works?
Well, the first race leg.
Okay. And then you have the race leg in the morning that starts at, what, 9 o'clock or something like that? Like that, yeah. And Norwood's had it a few times as well, haven't they? But they've got that goes up into the hills, up through McGill and places like that.
Yeah, they're a bit closer to a couple of places that they can go. Up the freeway, up the Green Hill Road, up Gill Road. So that makes it a bit easier.
My experience from Norwood, I remember when it started in Norwood, and I had an office basically on that corner, and my office was above the actual start, and we were all quite excited to watch it. And there was a lot of hullabaloo, and there was a lot of stuff going on. The actual race start, because they start in such a high gear, it's not like a motor racing start or something like that. It's like away they go, and they're still going, and here they come. So it's actually quite, it's quite a gentle sort of.
Race neutral. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't. So from leaving from here, I'm not sure where they start.
There's almost an anti-climax, is what I'm kind of saying.
Yeah, you get them all going. There's lots of stuff about them signing on. It's really quite exciting. All the interviews, it's all televised.
Yeah, that was interesting.
It's all pretty cool. When they take off, all the riders take off fairly gently, but they get going. Then all the support vehicles go through, and it's quite interesting. If you want to get autographs, you're into cycling. It's a great place to be because the cyclists are milling around for an hour or two beforehand, getting ready, registering, and doing whatever they do, taping their elbows or whatever. But they don't start timing them until just after Jepps Cross, around about where the drive-in is. They've got to get from here, because we won the rides, to the drive-in, and only there does Mike Turtle look at the traffic conditions, and he in the lead car says, now, and that's race start. Okay? So if Port Adelaide Enfield said they wanted it, and they had an event somewhere near Jepps Cross, now I don't know where that would be, but they might be a contender, because Mike Turtle would go, that's a start from the start line. That's interesting. But we can't do that.
Could we, is there other councils who are vying for the rest day event?
No.
So we could effectively, if we wanted to, say we could put our stamp on that and own it.
Absolutely.
It's interesting.
We are the first council in now 16 years to have an event that's not connected to a state start.
We could put our own flourish on that and make it our own.
And essentially we've designed ourselves to be the Northern Street Party to complement the Unley Street Party. We've had it, well, almost every year, except when they decided not to have it. They've done a very good job at it. So yes, we could actually do exactly that.
Okay.
I mean, it's sort of like a bit of a win-win situation, isn't it? Because if all things keep going as we've been saying about having the party the night before, and this saving of $25,000, and yet if we put in for the race start again and we get it again, well then we get a different sort of promotional type event happening, but we have to find $25,000. So that's basically the bottom line.
Yeah, we're probably jumping ahead a little bit, but we might come back to whether we should or shouldn't.
Yeah.
That's a more detailed discussion.
Do we have, one more, do we have the same sort of media coverage over to, as to whether we have a start finish or just have?
That's what I think we should come back to.
Yeah.
But I just had a question on the numbers. I'm not sure, you had a question about other stuff, but I'll get to mine.
Okay, that's all
Do you want to go back to the
Yeah, just quickly,
Yeah.
there's been a bit of talk about having to work longer through the night to clean up to have the road opening. I just want to understand that, or probably challenge that a little bit. What would be wrong with us just pushing the Jersey curbs to the side as soon as the cycling event's finished, or as soon as we open or stop the street party at 10:30 or through to 1 when we're here anyway, and then pick all the kit up the next day during normal hours to save at least the overtime payment.
Most of it's got to be moved off Prospect Road. That's
Yeah, but with that into
Yeah.
the side streets.
Yep. I guess it's kind of double handling because once we've got all of the stuff into the stillages, which are the big baskets, and we've got a forklift under those, and we're moving them from where they are into a side street, we might as well move them from where they are onto the truck that takes them away. That's pretty much the sort of thinking of it. It's kind of then everyone goes away, then you've got to bring the forklift back and the truck, and you've got to sort of double handle. So it is actually more efficient to get it off when we're packing up and getting it moving out.
Yeah, it's just disappointing to hear that because when I've been here at 1:30, you've done a fantastic job. The place is clean as a whistle. So I've been struggling to understand what's the extra work required to not have to I don't understand what the extra work is because the toured and under people come in on the stage start and they bump in all the fencing and hoarding and the archway and the stage and the whole lot, except for the closure of Prospect Road. And, well, yeah. So I don't kind of get it.
So all of the umbrellas and things are still in Chenna Car Park. All the toilets are still here. A number of the road closures are still in place, and we have the stuff we've been able to move off-site onto trucks. That's gone, but we still also have some stillages that are in the back here in the car park. But yes, it's toilets and it's all those tables and chairs that are set up and some of the marquees that are set up for the next day for all those people.
My request is why can't we look at saving every cent and not take them away at 3 o'clock in the morning, which will annoy residents anyway, and pick them up during normal hours the next day. Or sort of just de-hire them and say you come and get them, but you can't get them during the night. You can only get them after 7 in the morning.
Probably mostly because the people that pack down those marquees are kind of here because we can't pack the marquees down. Those hire companies need to pack them down, so they're here anyway. So for them to put it aside and come back, they might as well just stay doing it. It's sort of the way it goes. But
So I've just heard there's an extra cost. So if there's the same cost as doing one or the other, I'm not worried. I've just heard there's an extra cost not to have a stage start the next day, and I've been really concerned. I can't work out why that's the case. So if anyone's thinking about charging us extra to demob during the night, I think we should say, no, come back the next day. I don't want to pay any extra.
Yep. And for those that can stay, we would have them. For that equipment that can stay, we'll have that stay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So this is the figures from the combined positive results from increased income and the savings that we've been able to identify. And I think there will be more savings with regard to, so we've got...
The 9,000 is not right though, is it? Is that what we just discovered?
No, the 9,000, so that...
20,000.
I think you better give that to us again.
All right. Okay. I don't know if that all was working earlier. Okay. These are the sponsors we've got. Trans-Pacific Cleanaway, give us all our waste and our toilets in kind. Quattro's come on, who are a local developer, as our gold sponsor and also naming rights for the circuit. Silver sponsors in Telstra North Park, Harris Real Estate and First National Regal.
Harris first time?
No,
Second time.
Fenwick's first time, they've come on, they've got naming rights for the main stage. Shankers a return, Brew Boys a return, ANZ Bank a return. Adelaide Hill Cider a return, Hazelgrove Wines are our new wine sponsor, Commonwealth Bank a return, Blackfriars Priory for the Luby Kids Ride are new.
PackRight as our inaugural green sponsor are new, and they've been fantastic, and they've done a really, because Sally Ann does so many events, she does Gorgeous Festival, she does WOMAD, and she does us. She's done a deal with PackRight that being able to look at their offers as far as all of their compostable packaging in that really big bulk order that's outside of our own events, so looking at over the 3. So we've got great prices. In fact, people are coming back with the compostable containers being equal or slightly less than regular containers.
Carolyn, sorry, just a question, because I think it must be about 2 years ago we sat here talking about green event and it was cost prohibitive at the time. Just in terms of how that's going to work practically, so those who are serving food, presuming just food, they will buy those products through PackRight? So we'll mandate to them they must use those?
That's right. That's right. And we will have green waste bins and yellow cans and bottle recycling bins at the event. There will be a few of the red lid bins around the caterers for cling wrap and things like that. So it basically means when you have your food and you're finished with it, instead of having to scrape your food into the green bin, plastic into the recycling and the rest into the red bin, the whole lot can go into the green bin.
We have some bin buddies.
We've got bin buddies, we've got key staff. Yeah, we're still trying to work.
And actually,
trying to work out. Well, maybe we could bring him back.
Stand by the bin and make sure you put things in the right
no, they
place.
help you understand why you do that. Make sure.
But it is simpler because, you know, most people will understand that you don't put a can or a bottle in a green bin, whereas red bin is hard sometimes to navigate.
It's really good.
And the prospect fair.
We're moving towards that. We haven't made it compulsory in 2015, but we will in 2016. So we have 4 music stages. At this stage we've got nearly 80 stall holders. We have 5 unique bike racing events on the Quattro circuit. Our Kites and Bikes community art project starting to come in. We have a dedicated children's zone and Buster's Corner, which is new. Roving entertainers. We're bringing back the open market from Wellness Village. We'll do the local business themed bike art, and it is Prospect's inaugural green event. So this is the other part of the presentation, and again I'll get those figures to you. I do sincerely apologise, they were all adding up earlier today when Nathan and I met.
Or question,
Sorry, Nat.
Carolyn, so you talked about numbers. Is there any practical way of determining economic benefit from the council spending this money on this event?
Well,
have you done that, and what does it tell you?
We've done it in a very basic way. We've said if you get 21,000 people and all of them spend $10, you know, it's nearly $500,000 worth of income coming into that event. With Matt now on board, we've been talking about doing a better business analysis with regard to the opportunities that it brings to our local businesses. We do a small survey, a phone survey, where we ask businesses how many people they think they spoke to or met, approximately what their takings were for the evening, approximately, like if they were doing meals, approximately how many meals, did they think it was worth it, and will they be back next year. And so, you know, everyone does respond very positively, even those that perhaps aren't about selling, they do recognise the long-term opportunity for raising people's awareness and people's awareness from outside Prospect of what they do here at Prospect. So increasing number of businesses are opening their doors now. Komodo didn't used to open, they open now. And we've got, you know, some new businesses across the road here. So Harris Real Estate, they have a big presence. Haven't spoken to the new bakery, but I'm sure they will be on board. But with Matt, we'll talk about having a better financial kind of benefit analysis done.
Do you want me to add to that, Carolyn?
Yes, thanks.
So I've come from Unley, and one of my main roles at Unley in their involvement with their Tour Down Under involvement was undertaking an economic evaluation event, and we outsourced that to a provider to do it because it's quite a big job, and there was a cost associated. It's around $7,000 a year, but there's a range of probably tools and elements that I learned over the last 5 years that I'd hope that we can bring to this. And you can get some interesting stats around place of origin of the people who are coming here. We'd run surveys around what the residents, well, what the participants think, what the traders on the road think, what the traders from outside the road think, and then what the sponsors think. So just build on what's been...
What were their numbers though, Matt? What was their economic benefit?
There was the revenue that was brought into the night was around from memory, between 500 and 600,000. But then you've got to take away some elements such as what normally would happen on the night if the event wasn't there. So there's sort of a benefit of around 400,000 was sort of brought in from the night. How that was determined was interviewing approximately 220 people on the road on the night, and they'd go through a detailed questionnaire which would take probably 10 minutes of their time, and they'd talk about how much money they'd spent there, how many people they'd come with. And we got a good idea of people coming from who'd attend the event from interstate, because a lot of people come from interstate for the cycling event, and then they're looking for things to do, and that's, I'm sure you'd be getting a fair portion of them as well, and that's a great advertisement for Prospect.
This is what I was going to say before. There's also an intangible branding element for Prospect that you might not be able to put a figure on, but it would be quite significant.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's the principal reason why I promote it from our point of view. When I'm briefing the traders, or the staff are briefing the traders, ask me to do a bit of an intro, I implore the traders work out how they're going to get the most out of it, because this is essentially a business event. We've turned it into a community event. Its origins are to showcase our city's comments, whereas the fair is about our city's community, clubs, schools, all sorts of things. That's their event. What I ask the businesses to do is to think of 3 things they want to get out of the night, and go away and work out how exactly they're going to make that happen. I said, if all you're thinking about is increased sales, well, I'll be disappointed, but count it as one. You've got to find 2 other things. And then at the end of the night, make sure you've ticked your boxes. So don't, the first couple of events, first one in particular, I think we had people who were, I don't know what they thought. They thought they'd put out a collection hat and earn a fortune. We had people who were specialists in, say, perfume, who were selling frozen daiquiris out the front. It made no sense at all, and they got really upset that it didn't work for them. What they should have, in my view, should have been doing is dragging people in to say, do you know what we do? Do you understand how this is so special? Do you understand you can't get this anywhere else in the world? You should have been roaming the street with free samples. They could have been having a promotional event. It was at one of clothes designers in King William Road, Eliza Manuel. She doesn't sell anything on the night. She invites all of her best customers to have a massive party on the night. Okay, so she uses it as a promotion event and has no expectations about sales. I bet she does incredibly well at it. So it's a matter about how people think about what they do, and I think it's our job to get our businesses to get the most they can possibly get out of it.
And how do they get return visits? Hardly any of them seem to think about having some incentive, about how to get return visits, what promotional thing, are they going to...
You're getting better at that.
Yeah. So if I can start, this is the first time we're going to have a non-stage event, or a non-start event, and we're not going to know patronage or any of this economic benefit stuff until March, but we've got to make the decision in February to go to 2016. So we'll have to make the decision without any intel about how it went.
But you can put a bid in, and when they come back and they say, is your bid still stand, you can say no.
Okay, so there's no commitment at that stage.
No financial.
Is there a bidding cost? Is there a cost?
No.
Oh, okay.
Alison has a question.
Yeah, just a quick question. And again, personal versus elected member. So personally, when I was put myself up for nomination, people I was talking to had a concern about the amount we were spending on the event. And I was just wondering, does the council have a direction of where the funds would be reappropriated to? Should we not be doing this next year? Is there an option B, or is it sort of a given that perhaps next year being January?
We just don't put it out.
Part of our budget process. Councils traditionally always had a street party. Used to be the Fashion, Food and Wine Fair. It was at a lesser cost. But ultimately, each year it's a budget decision as to whether you continue to hold that.
So the money wouldn't be redirected to other causes?
May well be as part of the budget process.
Well, there's two options, and in between those two there's any number of permutations. But option one is you just don't collect the revenue. So your rate rise is slightly less than it would have otherwise been. So you don't reappropriate the money, you just don't collect it. The other thing is you collect it and you find another project for it to go to. That's actually not what we're supposed to do under the Act, but never mind, we could choose to do that. Okay? Essentially, if we don't have an expense, we shouldn't be collecting money for it. Bit of history, the street party used to cost us about $90,000, nowhere near the level of sponsorship. It was pretty hard work. We got between 4,000 and 6,000 people. I remember more at 4,000 than 6,000. And so that was costing us $20 a head. This thing gets 21,000 and costs us net of sponsorship 160. So this is cheaper per head, actually quite a bit cheaper per head. If you look at the fair, we get about 4,000 at the fair, costs us about 40. So that's about $10 a head.
Quite good for us as elected members to have in front of us.
I could send you, or I can send out the 2014 evaluation report, which has got all of those per head breakdown, all of the dollar figures. You know, it is hard to remember them, even though it was only.
You've got to net them off too. That's the other thing. Because this event is so big, it's very expensive to run, but it attracts sponsorship like we don't get anywhere else in anything we do, and visibility.
It also attracts.
Then you've got, I think Mark's quite right, the branding we get out of this event is enormous. As a part of a larger event. All 4 stations doing their weather broadcasts out of this event this year. We can't get them to do that at the fair. No way. And we hire a PR person who promotes us through Twitter and Facebook like you wouldn't believe. And it's fantastic for recognition. When Matt goes out and talks about Prospect, it's a huge part of, you know, that place is happening. That photograph you've got, all those people in the street, it's just gold, absolutely gold. So it's very hard to put a value on it, but it certainly has a value.
But what it does attract is people, and it attracts community spirit, and I think that's that is seriously important, serious social benefit.
Goodwill.
And the demand that we keep doing it, and we do more of it, which we can't afford, is enormous.
It's another avenue for some of the community groups that now have another avenue to get involved apart from the Prospect Fair. So again, it's a different crowd, a different thing, you know.
Social capital is huge.
Like the history group, you know, they just can't believe the number of people that stop and, you know, chat, buy things, you know, add a few more, you know, to our history recollections and things like that. So
it's very much designed as an all-ages inclusive family style event. So it's not a food and wine event. It's not boozy and come and drink and kind of, you know, have a sort of crazy time. It's actually bring your family and hang out together in Prospect in a comfortable environment that's affordable and just sort of spend time together. So, and we get very good reports from emergency services and all the police about how well managed the alcohol is in our event. We've never had any problems. So by all accounts, it's a huge success.
I have one more question. I know since we haven't got the start, we don't get the riders here and we don't have the opportunity for autographs and things like that. Being a rest day, is there any opportunity, I don't know whether this happens, to have riders there, have any of the actual Tour Down Under people there, a bit like on motor racing days on the Friday, you know, you'll have a signing day when when it's not actually race day, it's meet and greet day. Is that something we...
They are invited, they're always invited, but they're often under contract which limits their public appearances. But we do get a few people down that are sort of not directly now associated with the race, but have been significant riders in the past and that sort of thing. I personally...
Is that ad hoc or is it...
ad hoc, but they're certainly invited, and if the tour people know they're coming, they will let us know. I don't recognise them, that's what we need actually.
Is that something if we were able to structure that more like if it was, I don't know, a little bit more branded for the riders, is that something that we could probably capitalise on more, make a sort of an hour or 2 hours?
It's a really good question, and I would say no. funny thing is, we've had 3 years of this thing growing at 25% a year, not a professional cyclist in sight. I can't explain why the crowd is so much bigger. There's something about it being associated with the event which just ignites the imagination. And the people that come are generally community people in the main. They're gobsmacked about how great they feel when they get here, that how good the kids, the oldies, that it's such a family event. They're not looking for cyclists. The reason I say no is, when we do the cycling presentations for the men's and women's circuit that race their little hearts out up here, I mean, it's a tough race, 80 hairpin turns they're going to do. The crowd that watches the presentations is a pretty minor crowd. There might be 100 people watching. So if we bring out and make a fuss of some cyclists, I'd be a bit concerned that we wouldn't actually be able to do them justice, because they're not approved, they're not on their bike, they're not at the signing on board. When people go, there's Mark Stand and he's with, you know, whatever the team is.
Stands and bicycles.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Yeah.
UniSA and something like that.
So if we wanted to do it, I think we had to think really carefully about how do we make them feel great, how do we get the crowd to be kind of.
Yeah. So it might be a lot of work for nothing.
Could be. Yeah.
What we have done this year is we've got the Australian Masters Cycling group coming, the veterans, and they're doing a 3-race, an A, B, C grade race. And so by association, a lot of friends and families will come and watch the veterans. And the Masters with the Loopy Kids has now been expanded from 140 to 210 kids, because we're always oversubscribed with that. We have the Tweed Ride clubs coming out. 120 people dressed in tweed are going to ride their bikes from Adelaide to Prospect, and then they're going to do a show and tell, show and shine on the circuit.
If it's only in the 30 degrees.
It won't be. It'll be a stinker. And we have what we're calling the Prospect Sprint, which is the Tenor cycling group that are doing a sprint.
So we have more opportunity to find our own niche that isn't governed by a start time. Sorry, I didn't see your hand there.
No, I believe I'm in the Tenor cycling group.
So we have the opportunity to find our own niche that isn't governed by a start, then everyone nicks off. It runs through to its natural end of an evening.
It's built-in community.
And we can put our own events on and be within the event without actually being constrained by the event.
That's what we do, Mark, and I think people come to the street party for lots of different motivations. A lot of people come because they love a good street party. Yeah. They're not most of them aren't necessarily here for the cycling.
Or they come back they used to live in Prospect and they like to come back and catch up, you know.
So I think by directing it to solely about cycling, I think that does the community a disservice. I think just let people come for their own reasons and motivations, and that's what makes it successful, I think.
But, sorry, just to come back to your point, think about it as 2 events.
Yeah, absolutely. One at night, one in the morning.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's not like we'll now run this one like we want to. We've always run it like we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
The next day is quite an interesting thing to watch, and Carolyn knows this inside out, but we would sluice out everything that's set up on the Monday night, so it looks like you can operate the whole street again. They come in at 5 in the morning. They set up every barricade, every sponsor's sign, the big boom over the top, the whole stage, the whole PA is strung up off the light poles ages before. Everything you see about the start is pumped in, and that's the 15 grand. That's the fee that you pay to have that happen. So for them, the 15 grand is actually pretty cheap. They think it's pretty cheap. And then when they've taken off at 11 o'clock, at 11:30, their trucks come out and they're picking up those fences. And by 1:30, everything's gone. Street's open. So we run entirely the street party event, and we work with them when they run the stage start event. And on the stage start, it is a different exercise for the businesses to participate, because they can't be on the street. They've got to operate from their front doors and their counters, and for some of them it's a plus, and for some of them it's not a plus.
Yeah, I remember it in Norwood, same sort of thing, exactly the same. It was restricted, a lot of it was restricted for them, and they had to really work to actually make that up.
We do need to move on to the next item very soon. So the key question for Carolyn?
Yes, is do I put a bid in for 2016?
Based on the fact that it's non-binding, doesn't require any fee at this time.
That's right. Just an expression of interest, and usually I do a bit of a scope, a bit of an overview about what they can expect. They know our events, so I'm not really telling them anything new. So
just whether we make the bid.
But that being undertaken, it's just an operational process.
There's no downside, is there?
Okay.
And if you want to be reminded of how fantastic it was in January, on Council's website in YouTube is a fantastic little kind of 3-minute terrific prospect show reel that really highlights all the things that we do.
Carolyn, you'll be sending out a copy of this year's report?
Yes, evaluation report, and I'll fix those figures. And again, I'm terribly embarrassed and I'm really sorry that shouldn't have happened.
Should be.
All right, thanks for that.
The posters around?
Yes, here are the hot off the press posters, and you can see on that the number of sponsors we have. There's lots and they're small, but they all have networks that again help support our event. The other thing I'll just go up and get is the 2015 Santos Tour Down Under booklet, which you'll see our event is in.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. That's good. Thank you. All right, the next item, the final item for the night, relates to the council prayer. I just want to welcome members of the gallery that are here tonight, I think, for that item. I just want to remind you that at workshops the gallery can't interject or speak, but can do so if you require a deputation at council. Okay, so the item is as listed, and you'll see from the notes that at the council meeting on the 26th of June, this matter was last discussed. Pretty much put forward by Christina. So, and Christina, you've done a lot of information, a lot of research, so maybe it's best if I just hand to you at this stage to just work us through your views and your comments on that, and then we can have an open discussion. Because it's an interesting item and there'll be varying views, before we conclude, we'll go around the table to see what each one of you think before we, so it can guide management as to what sort of report to put together. So,
yes, yeah. So you would have had the papers that were sent out, and just a discussion as a discussion starter, and to have a think about it, and the research document. I haven't had time to go back since last June and double check everything, but I don't think things have changed too much from what I believe. So you have there the background, and it was just really, it just came to my mind how the discussion went at our council meeting with the one just recently, you know, about just looking at various things on the council agenda, and it just, you know, again, some other things occurred to some people, and occurred to me also about in looking through other council agendas, how they conducted things. Some things I haven't even thought about, obviously, in about 23 years, you know, going through, you know, things. And so I think it, you know, it's always good to obviously review things, not just slavishly perhaps accept what's there year in and year out, you know, over many, many years. And because then we had one which was successfully moved at council that I brought up about we should be, you know, moving the conflict of interest declaration up, you know, where it makes a bit more logical sense to have it now. So that's just another area as well. And so then it came, you know, occurred to me, and some comments that have been said to me over the years and that. So, you know, I just thought, well, I'll bring it, you know, up to council and see, and then in discussion, you know, there are people that have got various points of view, and it just seems to me that, you know, for many years we've had one councillor member who quite clearly doesn't, you know, has a different point of view about prayer and that, and I guess we could all have equally, you know, different viewpoints and all that. But I think, as I say here, that, and I do have a background being baptised and confirmed in the Anglican Church and all that, so it's really, my mine is that when I became an elected member, that I wasn't really elected to impose any personal belief system upon other elected members and other staff that are here and other members in the gallery. And so as we know, the saying of prayers on the council agendas, it's an optional custom, just like we've found out there are other things that we can either improve or not have. And it's at the discretion of the council. Some councils open the meeting with a simple welcome from the principal member, or as we say, the mayor, others with a prayer, and others use a statement of their own determination, like the one I just pulled out as an example of, say, Onkaparinga, and, well, Yankalilla has the same as Onkaparinga. So they've actually combined both the Kaurna welcome as well as the sort of acknowledgement more that so Steve Onkaparinga we recognise the city's considerable natural and cultural heritage, including thousands of years of traditional ownership by Kaurna, and the more recent contribution from people either born here or who have migrated here. I don't think that's something that we acknowledge in what we've been traditionally having. As we meet together, we build on this heritage by respecting and listening to each other, thinking clearly, being receptive to new ideas, speaking honestly, and deciding wisely for the current and future well-being of those we serve. And so that, takes on a bit more of that idea of the traditional prayer that we're having, because that's what the traditional prayer is more or less calling upon, the fact that we, even though it's to a higher being, is saying about that we acknowledge about this respecting each other, and that we here to work together harmoniously, and all that. So then there's the other one that the current prayer could be changed to a more modern pledge that equally applies to elected members and staff present at the council meeting. So I suppose that's there. I just sort of, it came together from some of the words that we have in our current prayer, as well as when I was just reading through a whole lot of the 68 other councils' contributions. And I guess one thing that did a bit surprise me in the research was that, and I guess it's an assumption and not a valid one now on my part, but I thought the rural councils would be the ones that perhaps would be more conservative and perhaps more from the way they were perhaps originally set up, have one, but it just shows the opposite there. That it's more that the rural councils don't have the prayer, and it's more the metropolitan councils that have them. So that it was just interesting. So I think it's just I'm just there bringing it up. I've done a bit of background information. I've spoken to other people in the community about it, and so that's there. All right.
And the task for management is to really get a sense of how you as elected members feel, and then present a report to councillors in accordance with the resolution. So that's what tonight is about. So maybe we'll just have a conversation for 10 or so minutes, and then I'll go around the table. Does anyone want to lead off with any comments as to Christina's introduction, which is very good, by the way?
So can I just ask a question, Christina? You said something right at the very end that just caught my ears on. You said you've spoken to a number of people in the community. What have they said? And what sort of quantum are you talking about? It's a very interesting topic. I'm just
it would be less than a handful. So I haven't gone out there and done any particular. What it most probably be more would be about 3 handfuls, I guess, over the course of this coming out and that, So
I need a handful.
5, 10, and 15 make 3 handfuls.
Okay.
And most of them, they all said yes, and there was about, I've only had one person, and a very good conversation, and that one person that had, some concerns about it. So that's all I can say.
Just on that, I've got some hard facts from City of Charles Sturt Council. It actually is an online poll. I contacted Stella Thomas, an individual who contacted the Charleston Council several years ago on a similar issue, and they did a poll, and it said, should council maintain the current prayer pledge? And just said the current prayer pledge, doesn't say not to have a prayer or not to have a pledge, but 63.7% of the recipients said no. You asked how many people were surveyed, but I'll have to get back to you on that. 32.7 said yes, and 3.6% said unsure. So that was another council.
That was recent, I think.
Yes, it is 2012.
Just so you know, Council does run a online community panel, so we do have that potential to run a similar survey. Any other thoughts or questions?
Okay. I have had people speak to me, and one lovely lady, because I went and seen her, and she said if we got rid of the council prayer, she'd never vote for the people that did it, and it hasn't come up before the voting, and I actually went and visited her. I think I did, because I wasn't 100% sure if I was at the right house. But I visited a couple of people in the group, but I'm pretty sure I come across that lady, and I explained, I said, well, you know, you perhaps have to vote for someone else because I've got my reasons. If you want to hear them, I'll tell you, but if it comes up, I'd vote without the prayer. So I'll never know whether she voted for me or not, unless she can show me. But look, I'll tell you where I personally come from. I have spoken to people, and I've been mixed with religious people, and a concern that comes against what I believe is someone, and I suppose we're recording, I can't talk about previous councillors and that sort of stuff, was if you want to try and get rid of it, you want to get rid of the Christian being in Australia and cater to the Muslims and go down that track. And those that were on council before will know the person I was talking about. And that's about the furthest thing from my thoughts. You know, that's nowhere absolutely in my thoughts, because my greatest respect is having respect for other people to believe in what they do. And I don't always respect everyone with that, because Christina would be the only one in the room here that would know that when we had the racist people like National Action tried to come to Prospect and speak on the steps, I was physically and whatever was necessary out there to stop those people, not just to talk against them. I have a different belief of sometimes how you sort out problems. But those people should never, ever have come, and thanks to the council we had, we voted against it, but they ended up on the steps. So in my belief, it's no way in any thought against any religion or any racist group or anything like that. But I come, and I've tried now for 17 years to try and do my best bit on council to look after people and try and find. I've agreed with other people at times around this table and other tables here that I might not personally agree, but other people say, well, this is the best thing for people, so I support it because I trust the people I work with. I have a big problem. I bow to no one. I would never bow to anyone. I went to a Catholic school in my first part until my dad died, and then I went to Ethelton Primary School back in the port, and then Herbury because I wanted to be a vet. Didn't work. But I done those sort of things, but I had the same problem with the Queen and things like that. So I have a personal problem of bowing to people and saying that I bow to people. And I have that problem because I see no one any less than me, and I see no one any better than me. And it's a very strong thing. So I have that. I love the people that I know that believe and have all these things in their life and that take them through. The two people that are sitting here, people that have been associated with your church that I've known for years, and the respect I have for them is unmentionable. But if I'm going to be that honest person that I come here on that night, I feel that makes me very difficult. And I'm not comparing it to the Ghana welcome, because I think we should be changing how that's said anyway, but I'm not comparing to that. And so I'm not saying, well, I'd love to stay in here and listen to that one and take part in the garden of welcome, but I don't want this. If Christian people want these sort of things, I'd be quite comfortable. The last time in your church, I was up there with Kate's the christening and that sort of stuff. And I have no fear or no problem going there and associating with people. But honestly, if you want someone like me, and we have had 2 people, I think, in my time on council, that would be for religious grounds, that they would be a bit offended by standing up to this. One was no good because he left his family and run away and hid in another state, but still they had a reason. And so I just find if people want me to be honest and stand up there and say them a bit, and my duties I'm going to do here, at the best of my ability, I'm going to come here and do my duties honestly. And I should say the words that I'm saying. Understanding to face the duties of being united. Well, I'm going to try and do that. I believe hopefully the people around me, equal with me, will show me the wisdom. The staff, all the staff I might add, that we got sitting here that shows me that wisdom to work. I have a problem with bowing to anybody, and so I would vote against having a prayer. And I'm sorry if it does offend other people, but I think I can be more honest with other people by saying that. That's how I feel. And I in no way feel anything bad about other people that have a religious belief.
Real quick. Mark, you had a question?
Look, I was just going to, I guess my comment is I don't have a problem with the prayer. I don't have an issue with it whatsoever. I understand where some councillors are coming from in terms of their concern. I totally respect that. I'd be really interested, Mark, I don't know how many spots or how many photos we've got left of the community panel, but that might be a really appropriate place to put it initially. Hearing other councillors have done similarly, it might be really useful to do that. I just want to be really clear, and I said this in June, I'll say it again now, I want to be really clear about what's the problem we're trying to solve by changing it. And notwithstanding people's personal views, because we are 9 personal views of the city of 20-odd thousand, but what's our, what is it that we're trying to do? And that will help me make a decision about which way to go forward. I'm not fixed either way. As I said, I have no problem with the prayer. It fits in with my sort of values and my beliefs. But if I can understand what the issue is, I can understand how to come to a solution. And that's just what I'm struggling with. So I struggled in June, so I'm struggling now. And I just think it'd be useful, maybe the panel, to help us explore some of that as well.
I think we do have some survey opportunities. Okay, thanks for that. Tell us.
I support what Mark was saying, so I think I'm probably in the minority by saying this, but I support the current prayer in its form. I think it would be worth canvassing the views of residents of Prospect in a wider sense before we do come to some kind of a resolution on the matter. And I think that's with respect to the institution, with respect to how we're here and ultimately how our system of Westminster government's formed, but also what the community's view on the issue in a more larger sense is. I didn't have an awful lot of time to look into it, but I did look at the 2011 census, and only 25% of our residents identify as having no religion. So that means there's a 75% block of people that identify with some religious view, be that Christianity or something else. So I think before we start to move entirely away from separating ourselves from a value set that is a faith-based value set, we should ask people what they think. And if it is a resounding no, then I'm happy to take that and accept it and move on. But equally, I think it is worth canvassing community views in a more wider sense. And be it that the wording's changed, that's okay, happy to accept that. But I think some reference to faith is what section 1.2, I think, of the agenda is trying to achieve. And I think before we abolish that, just looking at that census data alone, 75% of people identifying with some form of faith, we should go out and consult more widely.
Thanks for that. That's good. The online panel, I think we have 300. 380. So that gives you an indication of how many people we would be surveying. So that's fine. Thanks for that. Tell us. Any other comments before we go on to it?
I guess we're not a religious institution, so I don't know why we're supporting one God over others. And I get your point about 75% of people do have faith, but it's not necessarily a Christian faith. So I think whatever, and I actually don't understand why we say anything. I don't know why we just don't say welcome to the meeting and get on with the meeting, because we're a council making decisions based for the community, and I don't understand why we even have anything at the beginning. I think you just get on with the meeting and get it done. But just looking at the Onkaparinga one, that reflects all sorts of faith values. It reflects community values, and we are a community institution. We're not a religious institution. And I don't, if it came down to the vote, I would probably vote against the prayer because I don't see the purpose for it in this context. So that's just my point of view. I don't know. I really don't think it's a community issue. I don't think that the only people who'd be interested in making a comment would be the people who oppose getting rid of it, really, for religious purposes. We're not a religious institution.
Yeah. I agree with Monica. I think it would be pointless taking this to a community panel.
I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying I don't think it's a community issue.
I don't think it's the sort of thing it would take. And I like the context of the city of Onkaparinga style paragraph there, more than something that's quite specific about a particular religion.
Right.
I'm grateful for Christina bringing this back. I tried to do this in 2006 pretty clumsily and got squashed. And what I did was I went to a local priest and said, this prayer to me looks pretty old in its language. It's not the sort of language that I think any church would offer its parishioners now. Or if they did, they'd say this is a special place, it's a traditional prayer, but it's not our current kind of language. So I feel like it's not very inclusive, and he agreed. And he and I, well actually he worked on it more than me, wrote a new, much more inclusive introduction to the meeting, which had a whole heap of values in it. I tried that on and got shot down in flames because I hadn't included people, quite rightly got shot down, because I hadn't included people in that transition. But I still hold to the same sentiments. And what we have is old, it's anachronistic, it is, I think, out of place in the context of a community organisation like ours. We're not a religious organisation, and I'm part of a parish, I'm part of a school board. Prayers in those places, absolutely, completely appropriate. They're dedicated to bringing a Christian faith and tradition to the people who come to those places. Everything they do is inculcated by their faith. When we finish saying our prayer, we have no other reference to our Christianity in any of the decision-making that we make. So it seems to me we have this lip service to this prayer at the start, and it's completely irrelevant after that. So to me, it's out of place. It doesn't guide us in the sense that we would want a statement to guide us. In fact, my third problem with it was that it is against the value sets of some of our elected members. And instead of uniting us, it actually makes some people quite uncomfortable. And I think, well, if we want a unifying statement at the start of the meeting, we want us to be unified. The purpose is that it has a meaning to us. It's not a meaning to the rest of the community. They wouldn't have a clue that we say a prayer at the start of the meeting. It's not for them. It's for us to feel that we are here working on behalf of a mob of people that's greater than us. That's the intention. That we don't stand on our soapbox and we get what Talis wants or what Alison wants or what David wants. We do our best for all the people that aren't in the room. That's what that statement's for, and that's what it should do. And in my view, it's too old and it's too Christian-focused to enable that to be broad enough to make everyone feel comfortable and unified. And in my view, that's why it's got to be challenged and changed. So you asked me the reason. I think there's three pretty compelling reasons about why it needs to be changed. And it's not just because we may well have a Muslim amongst us or a Buddhist, I don't know that. But I just sit here thinking, well, what if we did? What if we did? I mean, can we read this prayer out? It reminds me about when I had a junior guy working with me when I was much younger, and he was, because he was a junior bloke, we'd go and get the smoker. So we'd send him hot dogs, pies, pasties, and ham and cheese sandwiches. And after 3 months, someone said, so what does Azani Reis Sheikh Salim mean? It's a very long name. I said, oh, it's a Muslim name. It's a Muslim name. I'll have a hot dog with... Oh, so you've been going down and getting all of our pork food every day for 3 months, and we haven't given that any thought whatsoever. He said, oh, it's okay, I'll go into the next shop and get my spinach and ricotta, pastry. But we just thought, oh, how terrible. So we hadn't even bothered to think about, the sensitivity around that. So it kind of reminds me of that, and I just think I want it to be really as inclusive as it can possibly be, and as motivating as it can be. And at this stage, I don't think it does that. To me, it's something that absolutely needs fixing. And in terms of going to the public with it, I agree with Matt. I think it's relevant to them. They don't know it. They wouldn't have a clue. All we do is get people worried about whether we should be, respecting some Christian tradition that's the basis of government in Australia. And it's like, oh, please. The purpose of the prayer is to unify and focus us on our task. That's its purpose, and it's the purpose for us. And I really would think that that's the question we use one of our 4 slots to go to the community with. I think our community would be kind of wondering what we're on about. And there's far more important issues for them, for us to worry about, than how we start our meetings. That's my view. And I think the Yongkapring one's pretty close. I think it has a reference to considerable natural heritage. I'm not so sure that we can tick that box. We have a natural heritage, but I'm not sure that those words might not be appropriate. I'm looking to Alan because he knows the natural heritage better than most of us. But that would be
appropriate. But it says receptive to new ideas. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to come into this chamber with bias. You're supposed to listen, look, and build what's good for the community, even if it's not something that suits you. Speaking honestly, ICAP would be so happy with this. Really happy with it. Deciding wisely for the current and future well-being of those we serve. I mean, that's what we're here for, and I think that's more reflective.
Yeah, and so, and your comment was, should we have anything at all? I think we should, because it's a really great reminder that when we're all standing up, I read that out to you all. In fact, some councils read it together. Campbelltown reads it together. I think it's a really powerful statement. We are here for other people, and we're here to do our best, and we're going to be honest and respectful when we do the business of council. And you sit down and think, I'm going to make all of my decisions inculcated by that statement. Then it has meaning. You bring your own values to it, but we state a common value statement. I think we should have something.
It reinforces our latest code of conduct as well.
Well, that's it,
I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Mark is the last one to say comment.
It's interesting that what it's done is brought out personal views, and I'm quite ambivalent as to whether we have prayer or not. Personally, it doesn't offend me. I don't. If it's there, it doesn't worry me. If it's not there, it doesn't worry me. I listen to it, but I don't personally engage with it. I find it interesting that there will be people there who will switch off, and that's kind of odd that we have it. But having said that, like Alan, I had a couple of emails, people asking me, will you be supporting the prayer? And I said, if that's what you want me to go in there and support, I will support. I will say yes, based on because you're the community that have asked me. So I will be probably supporting it based on an email that I got from someone who voted for me, because, I don't personally have an opinion on it, but I'm taking an opinion out of community. So that's kind of interesting. It is an odd thing to have, and I personally think it's an odd thing to have in a community forum. I personally this is not the community speaking, but personally I would rather have something like Onkapringas, and I think the best way about going about that would be maybe having a public competition. There's plenty of writers and artists and people like that. You could say, okay, it has to be 100 words or less, or 100 characters or less, and put it out there and offer a small prize and say, you have the opportunity to have your piece of prose be a part of council, time immemorial. So that would be, I'm on the fence. I have no idea which way I would vote on it. At this point I would vote because someone from the community has asked me. Beg pardon?
One person.
Yeah, well, I have no opinion either way, so one person has swayed my opinion. And they were...
The powerful one person.
Okay. Just want to remind you tonight is not a decision-making forum, so it's only discussion. And it's going to inform us as to how we put a report together for you, which is a requirement of the resolution. So wouldn't mind going around the table just once more, and you might have to repeat some of yourselves, but the first thing is I wouldn't mind testing this issue of the online panel. Some of you have said no, but some might say yes. So that's the first question, if we have an online panel survey or not. And then secondly, if we have a report to Council, whether it is we have no prayer, an alternative, or retain the existing. So if you could just state your position roughly on those, it would give me some idea of how to write a report for you. So, Monica, do you want to lead it?
Well, I just think it's an inflammatory thing for the community to. I don't know. I'm a bit ambivalent about putting it to the community forum because I think you either think you do or you don't, and things like this get hijacked, and that worries me.
So that's a no for the panel?
That's a no. I don't think the prayer reflects our entire community. It reflects our Christian community. We're increasingly becoming more diverse, and I think we need something that's more across the board that reflects that, because we represent all members of our community. So if you had nothing, I wouldn't be fussed. If you wanted to put an alternative in that's more reflective about values rather than just Christianity, I would be happy with that.
Okay, that's good. David?
No to the panel. The panel should be used for things that impact on their lives more directly. Yep. Yes to a statement. I feel strongly that we should be having a statement, even to the point that we should all say it, but that's a subsequent decision. I hadn't realised that until I saw the count and I thought, wow, that's amazing. Why are they doing that? Sorry, your other question was...
Pretty much just...
Look, in terms of the panel, I'm happy for it to go to the panel. We have, I think, 4 or 6 slots a year, which we pay for as a block, as I understand, not per topic. So if it's a matter of losing a spot, not using it, or using it, I'd rather use it. And I don't think anything we put the panel is going to be potentially hijacked by any sector of our community. That's just what the risk you have when you go to a panel. So yes, the panel, but I wouldn't die and ditch over it. In terms of the prayer, as I said, I'm not uncomfortable with having a prayer. I'm uncomfortable about having nothing. If we have something, we need to make sure that whatever that something is inclusionary of our Christian community as well as our non-Christian community. So let's make sure we don't swing the pendulum too far the other way and say, well, we can't have this end of the spectrum, so we want this end and something we're not including. That's very good. I think whatever we have needs to be inclusionary. I'm happy to debate out what those words are, but I have no problem if we kept status quo either.
Either the status quo or an alternative statement.
With explanation, yeah.
Alan, you...
I'll go to the back one first and one second. With what we've already got, acknowledging the Kaurna people, and my thought is with them, or the way I feel when we acknowledge the Kaurna people, we acknowledge their ownership of the land, they're caring for the land, and that we should be looking after for them for the future. I would have that same feeling for, and I'll use the word white people, but I don't really mean that, but for the other people, the white people that live in Prospect too, I have that same sort of feeling because it's their land, because they live here now. And so my job is to look after their place, exactly the same, So I'd like to, and I only quickly saw, well, just read the Onkaparinga one tonight, but I think we could have something, and to back David, I believe we should have, and that we should have something, and I think it could be using the Kaurna people, because some of us actually believe in Nindi people that live just over the road, or did live over the road many years ago. So it acknowledges the whole people in the area. Going to the, so I believe not have the prayer as it is, but to have still something that we say at the beginning, just to give us that little bit of a that what we're doing tonight, and try and put, and I have them sometimes, try and put those bad feelings we might have about someone else at council behind us, and try and work with council to go ahead. So something, so we should have something. So going to the panel, I'm a little bit hesitant to that. I'd be more inclined to say no, because when you go to the panel, you're not going to put how I feel, or you're not going to put how someone else feels. So I'm a bit hesitant in the panel. but I'm not frightened of it.
That's good. Christina.
I agree with what David has said. I think it encapsulates it, and I actually hadn't thought about saying it together because, I mean, in a sense, that's the notion of prayer. If you're here together as an institution, that you do have something that's just reinforcing the culture of the place, yeah. So
yes to the alternative statement and the online panel.
No, well, look, I'm a bit. I don't know how they were selected, really. I mean, because you could have actually quite a bias there if it's one way or the other, and you could, because we just can't. How are they selected? Is it like self?
They join up. They join up.
They join up.
Not selected.
So you've got no idea, really.
Well, this is a random.
No. No, but I'm just saying, how then do you judge?
And do they have a English as a second language as well?
They can do a demographic match to our profile.
But even then, that doesn't. Even then, that doesn't go. That doesn't really.
Nothing's ever going to be perfect.
Representative sample.
That's right.
So no to the panel for you?
Yeah, this one, I don't think.
Matt, you've already said no to the panel. What's your view on no prayer, alternative statement, or retention?
I would be in favour of an alternative statement. It could be like the Scouts, if you get into a circle and crouch down and dip,
Woof, woof, woof.
dip, which is do your best, and then dobs, do our best.
They're already in a circle.
So we're already halfway there.
There's also a
So,
wolfpack one as well.
strongly yes to an alternative. I think it's
Yeah, strongly yes to an alternative. However, I do agree with David, there needs to be something that gives weight and gravity to the proceedings. So one of the suggestions that came out of the City of Charles Sturt was that I now ask all members to remain standing in silence to reflect on our responsibilities to the people of the City of Prospect. We have just a moment of silence. And to those who want to keep the prayer, I would say, and this is again from Stella Thomas who presented this to the City of Charles Sturt, if prayer is removed, you lose nothing. You're always free to pray in that moment of silence. And you can, as many are, be a practicing Christian while also supporting a secular approach in our public spaces. This in no way compromises your commitment to God. It simply recognises your desire to support the whole of your community. So I think it's just the difference between religion and secular and values. I think that explains it quite well.
Yes to the community panel. I think it's very important, just because it seems like a few of us have already been contacted by residents about it. So clearly it's a hot debated issue, and it's their meeting, they should be able to be included in it. I would be in favour of keeping the status quo, if not in favour of an alternative, and I think, alluding to what Mark was saying as well, giving due weighting to both our Christian heritage as well as to our progressive future.
That's it. Did I ask you about the community panel? Did you?
Again, it depends on how it's composed. I would say no, though I did quote the one from the Charles Sturt, but again, it would just depend how it's gathered.
Yeah. So that is a really important. A couple of other people mentioned that too. Though, what question would you ask? How do you preface it? It's not like a simple yes, no.
No.
I'd probably, if it's going to go that way, I'd want to see how the hell that's.
Yeah, we need to.
How do you structure that?
And I'm sorry, I'll wait till.
Finally, Mo?
That's really an interesting point. The community panel, what exactly do you ask? I think I'm against the community panel. I think there's going to be more feedback from our gallery than there will be from the community panel. I think there's going to be personally think there's going to be a flurry of lobbying. Personally, this is my own personal view, I would like an alternative statement that is encompassing of Christian beliefs as well, but it is not necessarily a prayer. I can't see why we can't do that, and that way it's more inclusive to everyone, and I would like that to be a product of the community. So rather than something we make up or steal from somebody else, I think we could make our own and make a Prospect one.
Okay, so from the observations around the table, that little support for the online panel, and that there is support for an alternative statement, and that's going to be the challenge, is to come up with a statement that relevant to the procedure.
Because I don't know if people remembered that when this was reported by Curtis, our previous reporter, in the Messenger Press, Prospect Council does away with God. I would have thought that there would have been, if there was an outcry about it, if there were people had real concerns about it, I was sort of thinking, well, I'm going to have a lot of people contact me, and I think there was one person that's contacted, being the same person, I believe, that's contacted all the others. So, I just think putting things into some context.
I think you're right. I mean, I would talk to more local community people than most of you, and not a single person's mentioned it to me.
And what about married ones?
Sorry?
What about married ones?
Or married, or divorced, or anyway, not idiot. Make it inclusive of all types of people. So I don't think it is an issue for the community, but I do think it's an issue for us. I really do. I'm kind of attracted to Mark's idea that we might make it a community venture. There's all sorts of strings on that boat.
I know.
It's only for us. Why would you do it?
Well,
So what if
when the report comes to us, I'd like you to explore how we would arrive at a statement. And there's probably three options. One is that we borrow one from the 40 other councils that are doing something.
I've got all
I've read all of them.
Two is that we form a bit of a working group, and the two or three people who are really motivated about it get into it and come up with some options for us. And the third is that we do make it an open community exercise, and we'd have to structure how we do that, and whether we go to the faith communities and say help us, or whether we go to the general community and say help us. I think that's, or both. Well, the general would include them. I wouldn't exclude them because I'm an inclusive sort of person. That you talk to us about a process that could work rather than us designing it here. So,
Yeah, I mean, from my thoughts are that we've got a bit more work to do to come back to you with, and in a workshop sense, before we take this into the public arena and try to vote on it. So I think I'd like to come back to you with some statement options and get more information from you. If you want to submit anything, you can. So we have more of a discussion about what that statement would be and what process we'd apply to it in the meeting situation. So we can have a bit more certainty over what we are considering. So that might be a two-stage process, and from there, if there's still support, we'll continue with the report to council. That's what I'm thinking.
looking into the future, I mean, you would hope in years to come that being an inclusive community, we would have people from different faiths and backgrounds in the council, and you don't want to place anyone in that awkward situation. And then I've gone to a public school, to university, I worked in the private sector, and I've never been faced with having to have a prayer in my workplace or school place or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, everyone has different values are fine, but it's not, I don't think it's appropriate to have change of
David said something very interesting. I mean, if there's a perception, even if it's in the minority, that we are taking something away from the process by removing the prayer, by even a minority of our people in our community, then I think if we are going to replace it with something like a statement, that's a fantastic idea to go to those people and say, how would you like to be included back into this again? If you feel like there's going to be something removed, how can you have your part back into this?
Can't we work it out for ourselves?
Yeah, we can.
If we're all adults, don't you think we're mature enough to work that out for ourselves?
You can do, but there's a nice sense of, if you can include people, I mean, there's that sense of inclusion and a sense of community, I think. I mean, whatever we create then is created by the community. I think that's got a nice feeling about it. But we could create it ourselves, I'm sure. But if we could do it inclusive of the community, then it's got a nicer wrapping in it, I believe.
It's interesting to find out, say, from the city of Onkaparinga, how they arrived at theirs, because, I mean, that seems to be a more modern approach. I don't know when they introduced it. So
I also think we've got to be careful. We've got a lot of work to do. Yeah. We need to have an appropriate response to this. Mm-hmm. And it's not a colouring competition that we put out. The best kid wins. It's got to be meaningful for us. So I guess out of the three options I put before, the one that appeals the most is that some of us would go away and work hard on it and come back and check with the others, what do you think? Because it has to matter to us. If there was an easy way for us to go to the community that was meaningful, I'd be attracted to look at what does that mean? I can't see it tonight, but I'm not, I'm not a designer by committee. But if you have some thoughts about how we could do that, then come back.
I think it would be good to refer this to the champions, maybe yours.
Yeah. Have we got a notable writer, like any, like a world-known novelist or anything like that or a poet? I write stories. You're a funny man. You're funny. But is there someone that we could just say, well, that was then written by blah blah from Prospect, and just commission it out?
Actually, our best writer.
Hang on.
Okay, we need to wind up because we're going to discuss this further at a later stage. So I'm thinking from tonight we'll have an agreement that we'll work it through the champions. Who are your champions again?
Councillor Larwood, Councillor Evans, and Councillor Hunt, and Councillor Group.
Okay, so are you comfortable to work that through with you?
Yep, if we were to put on the agenda, if there is a specific thing, whoever's interested to have a
And as well?
Yeah,
that is inclusive, yeah.
Okay, so you can put that out as a special meeting
So we just, yeah,
group and then invite anyone else along. That would be really useful.
that's probably likely to be February.
Okay, so we can work that up and then bring the thoughts of that group back to a workshop session.
Just one final little suggestion. I don't know what happened with the version that I read out from 2006, but Kerry, is there any way you'd be able to check and see if it exists?
Yeah, check our records management.
Records management, yeah.
Back then we had what are they, Keen office furniture.
It's not in your outbox.
On a Roneo machine.
Oh, wait. I don't know what I was using back then. No idea.
All right, so does everyone understand that? So from tonight, the champions will look at it first, bring it back to a workshop. We'll talk about the statement options and the process that we use. From there, if there's general satisfaction, we'll go to a formal council meeting. It's likely to be February, March in this coming year. Everyone good with that? All good. That brings to an end tonight, so thanks very much. There's a workshop again next week, a couple of items for next week. So.
I might be either an apology or fairly late because I've got a board meeting in Melbourne that day and flight doesn't get back till 7. So don't have a quick meeting.
You can dial from the tarmac, you can ring it as soon as you land.
The digital hub.
On the agenda we've got tonight, there's only one item for the next meeting. It's a farmers market. So what else have you?
Has it expanded since?
It's been expanded since. I think there's another issue, another item.
Another opportunity for improvement.
Didn't we raise something last week? What's the process around something being raised in a meeting and then being thrown out to workshops? Because we raised the concept of some policy around street parties. So does that just have to?
Yeah, we just do some research work, and then we just schedule into a workshop. So we're still starting to get that lined up.
Any chance we could get the narrow streets stuff back? Is that ready to come back?
I think next Tuesday.
Yeah, I reckon we can.
In the workshop.
Yeah. Because that's getting a bit long in the tooth. If we can push that along a bit more, that'd be good.
The workshop for the farmers market, will that have all the financials for that as well? Because I guess because we're making decisions on things we don't actually have a lot of the next to an accountant here, the firm figures on, and I think especially us new elected members, we want to make sure.
Yeah. Matt will be the one that's leading that. He's not here at the moment because he's got to go into state tomorrow, but I'll talk to him about that. I think that the discussion is more about the concept of retaining the farmers market on site, yes or no, and whether we apply some kind of licence fee to the state.
Mark, just on that, when we agreed to the farmers market, we talked a lot about the impact on local businesses, and at the time I think Justin was here, and I remember I said that 4 times to be very clear, that needs to come back when we evaluate it. And it was agreed that yes, impact on local business would come back as part of that evaluation. So is it possible to make sure that's at least covered in some way?
Yeah,
because I just remember we talked about that at nauseam at the time, and we were assured at the time that yes, absolutely, that would be built into the early KPIs, and we would have some base measures that we could measure against a year down the track, which is yeah, absolutely. It wasn't negative. It's just because the criticism at the time, of course, those that were here at the time. work with that, try and mitigate some of that risk.
Yeah. Could, when's our council meeting in December?
Meeting, and we'll go for dinner after the council meeting.
Right. It starts at 6 p.m.
Yeah, the council meeting's earlier in December. 6 p.m. start.
That's right, I remember now.
And then we'll
Finish by 8:30 at the latest, all right? So just don't keep rabbiting on about items at the meeting.
Yeah, I'll just remember the other item is terms of reference for audit committee.
Oh, to change.
Just to look at your guidance, how.
I think it's something.
So
That second maybe.
that is the other issue.
Okay.
The other item.
I'll close the workshop. If anyone wants to talk to any directors, they're hanging around, so you're welcome.
I've got a few issues for today.
Recording off.
So, that concludes the workshop for those of you who came out.
Email?
I hope you enjoyed that.